It was only when we pushed the podcast to its true limit, extending it far past what we first thought was possible, and to what I now question is sustainable, that we define the bounds of Between Pages and Friends, regretfully knowing not every listener would rate and review. An excerpt from The Journey of the First Friends, a second-hand account by Lauren, High Priestess of Relational Theory, translated into the common language by Khan, 9th Curator of Unpronounceable Names. Translated and redacted for academic consumption by Jon, Defender of the Gamer to Bookworm Pipeline. Checked out of the archives and never returned by Kyle, Grand Oracle of Unhinged Book Predictions.
Welcome back to Between Pages and Friends, a forum where four friends fearlessly face fantasy fiction. And friction too, am I right? Hosted by Con and Lauren, two book-loving besties, and Jon and Kyle, their real-life book boyfriends. I'm Jon.
I'm Con.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Kyle. In today's episode, we're discussing chapters 12 to 21 of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. This is a book club-style podcast, meaning there will be no spoilers for future chapters or books, so if you've only read up to this point, this is a safe space to read along with us. We'd love for you to share this podcast with your book besties and or significant other as well, so you can enjoy this epic series together too.
Additionally, this is your mild content warning. Iron Flame is a new adult book, meaning it was written for audiences 18 and up. Therefore, our conversations about this book are also best suited to adults. We will be discussing themes and quotes from this section that include non-sexual neck biting, getting roasted, and lost in the woods.
If you're a fan of this episode, you should consider joining our Patreon. We have an amazing community of other book lovers who we chat with about these episodes every week. We have a spoiler-free chat for our first-time readers and a spoilers chat where we cackle over all the things the boys have totally missed. You will also receive early ad-free access to new episodes, live events, a monthly book club, promo codes for merch discounts, bi-weekly D&D nights, and tons more. We would love to get to know you more over on Patreon.
Lastly, the best way to support any podcast is by writing a review on Audible or Apple Podcasts. It only takes a moment and it makes a lasting impact, helping our show reach more book besties. Here's a recent 5-star review on Audible from our new bestie, Ashley Dawkins, titled, All Day?
All day?
All Day?
All day?
All day!
Just one all day, but you get the idea. Currently listening to Tandem Read Part 3, and can I just say, I'm obsessed with the New Girl references. I came across this podcast by the grace of one of the 36 gods and have been swooning over the banter and Kyle rants ever since. I read both Throne of Glass and ACOTAR series last year, so I didn't follow along, but I'm so excited to read and listen in real time along to Fourth Wing. Thank you for the joy you've brought to my life with this podcast. Thanks, Ashley. We could read reviews like that all day. All day. And now over to Con with the weather.
Welcome back to the pronunciation guide for Iron Flame, chapters 12 through 21. First up in places, we have the Parchilly Forest and Haddon Woods, as well as the Lucerys and Moraine provinces. For characters, we have Jarrett, the rider in the ring with Xaden when Vi shows up to Samara. In the same scene, we meet Cornelia Sahali, the rider that Violet talks to while she's watching Xaden fight. Tomas is the squad leader from Second Wing, R.I.P. Nabil Jasek was the writer who died after requesting a tome from the library, also R.I.P. And from the first RSC trial, we had our other writers from Second Wing, so that included Tomas. He was there with Mirabelle, Brisa, and Cohen. Effie was the scribe. Dyer was one of the healers, a.k.a. Life Debt. Calvin, cadet asshole from the infantry. And Gwen, a.k.a. cadet quiet from infantry. Professor Lavinie is the history teacher. Other students mentioned in this section are Tristan, Dasha Fabrin, Nasia, who always be sleeping, and Cadet Trebor. In texts and excerpts, we have the unabridged history of the first 6, LOL, the sacrifice of dragonkind, and then the journey of the first 6, which was a secondhand account by Sagar Olsen, translated into the common language by Captain Madeline Calrose, and then translated and redacted by Colonel Phineas Cartland. For dragons in this section, we have Bruggen, which is Professor Carr's orange dagger tail. By the way, I have started looking up some of the dragon names, like the dragon name meanings. I did not include those at first because they are like a little spoilery in book 1 before we find out what people's signets are. But Bruggen means little lies. I don't trust Carr. I mean, I already didn't, but I really don't trust him now. Glane is Imogen's orange dagger tail. Glane means clean or pure. What was that for?
Yeah, why that reaction?
I don't know. It says the The one is saying that she's good in bed.
It's phenomenal in bed.
I mean,
I'm still stuck on Bruggen because, like, if it means little lies, why would you name your child that? Why is that a name?
no, it's the name of the dragon.
Yeah, well, if it's a real name,
But
though.
somebody had to name the dragon that.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like a real, Gaelic name, meaning somebody else out there in the world.
Like, precious little baby, I'm going to name you Little Liar. You look like your father, who was a liar. So you're Little Lies. Sorry to anyone named Bruggen. Roasted.
Roasted. Go on.
Then we have Cure, Bodhi's green sword tail, which Cure just means to put or to place. I don't think that really has a lot of context to offer. I'm including Rhiannon's green dagger tail here again because it was initially pronounced Fierge, and it is here pronounced as Fierg. And I think it kind of flips back and forth. And then we see Bade, Jack Barlow's now unbonded orange scorpion tail. Bade means flock or herd. We get some context that green dragons, especially those descending from the line of Craid Huain, have an especially stable connection to magic, which may be the reason that they're more reasonable or level-headed. For events and world building, we have Artist Powder and Ground Lilybell, which is how Violet took out Dasha. And then finally, the alloy that we've been talking about is made of an amalgamation of telladium, a few other ores, and a dragon egg shells. That's all we got for the pronunciation guide today. And now it's over to John with the weather.
It's going to rain.
All right, let's get into this episode. Just kidding. Go for it, John.
Violet makes it to Samara. She checks for Xaden in his room. He's not there. She follows their bond down to what is basically a fighting pit. And of course, there he is in all his shirtless glory, fighting another lieutenant for a time off pass. He wins, of course, and then they have a hardcore makeout sesh. Xaden stops it, though. He doesn't want to use sex as a tool to win her back. Good man. They talk a little bit about how the special venom daggers help boost the wards. Then heading back to Basgiath, Taryn and Violet are ordered to the flight field where Carr and Varish are waiting. Her punishment for not producing Andarna is basically using her signet over and over in an attempt to get Andarna to show up. On strike 41, Violet spasms and can't let go of her power. She slams her shields down just in time with the help of Taryn, but she practically burns out. Taryn takes her, dunks her in the lake to cool her off as Bodhi, Imogen, and a few others show up on the shore to help her out. Her skin is like red, she's like fighting for air, but she's alive. They escort her back to the dorms while promising that this will never happen again. Later that week, they watch Sloane continue to get clobbered on the mat. As Violet and the group head to physics, Violet is kidnapped. And it's their aforementioned RSC kidnapping. They're dumped out in the forest with some infantry squads, a couple healers, and a scribe. Their goal is to find the extraction point and secure it to get out of there. Only their signets are dampened, no contact with the dragons, and there's another team out there going for the same goal, and that team's dragons are hunting them, and vice versa. Good luck, cadets. Yeah. After some discussion, they begin making their way, doing a great job at making as much noise as possible along the way. And then, cresting a hill, they run into Bade, and she's pissed. The riders move to the front to protect the infantry and everybody else. The quiet one eventually tries to run. Calvin yanks her back, and somehow out of that ordeal, Tomas is the one to get torched. The next day, Ree tells V that she knows something is up with her. She's been noticing all the small things that's been going on, and when Vi is ready to talk, she's ready to listen. Their time in the woods finally ends with some disappointed teachers, and they're reunited with their dragons and head back to Basgiath. Violet's first visit is to the archives. She catches Jessenia, and after sharing some info and Jessenia working some things out quickly on her own, she agrees to help Violet with finding some early texts of the first 6 and how the wards were built. It's now time for challenges, and as Sloane gets clobbered again, Violet hatches her plan and disorients Sloane's opponent with some more herbal voodoo, giving Sloane the upper hand and getting her a win. Then Vi gives Sloane a choice: train with Imogen and get one of Liam's letters each time she does, or go on how she has been and probably eventually not make it. Jessenia provides Vi the text that she asked for, and she trades it for the Fables of the Baron. Very interesting. Violet reads through that and another book, not really getting any helpful info yet. She's ready to head off to Samara again when Varish escorts her to Taryn, noting that their squad didn't have flight maneuvers that week. And because of it, Xaden is on duty with a 24-hour shift, and Vi doesn't have clearance, so they can't see each other. Back at Basgiath on the way to Battle Brief, Rhee looks upset. She received word from her parents and a public notice about not harboring strangers. Markham snatches it from her hands and uses it as their first quote-unquote learning opportunity in Battle Brief, explaining, or rather making up a lie, that people outside the wards are claiming dragons are destroying or attacking their towns. He twists the lies to make them sound favorable. Vi barely makes it through class, finally bolts outside to let out some lightning, then races to the archives out of instinct, where she's not supposed to be. So much for trying to be subtle and secretive with Jasenia. Xaden comes to Basgiath, learns what Violet has been up to, and isn't too happy about it. Secrets are no fun. Secrets hurt someone. They pretty much argue the entire chapter as she returns one of the books to Jasenia and gets another. And now, ladies and gents, to a moment I've been waiting for. Tarn gets pissed enough to act, and act he does. On the flight field for maneuvers, and Darna obviously not going to show up, Varish tries to charge Violet with dereliction of duty and give her another punishment via her signet. Tarn speaks up, claiming humans have no power to summon dragons. Varish retorts that although that may be true, Violet's still under his command. Tarn's reply is simply sidling over past Varish and getting his jaw around Solus's neck, and he starts to squeeze. Tarn brings Varish to heel, making him apologize to Violet. I mean, what a scene. What a scene. Incredible. Later in the week, Vi and Rhee are heading to the flight field for Violet's next departure to Samara. She almost spills the beans to Rhee, but Tarn gives her a warning at the last minute to shut up, as Varish and his cronies come to check her pack as usual before she takes off. They arrive at Samara and find Mira to be newly stationed there. How exciting. Xaden makes a point of showing that he and Violet are indeed together so that Violet can stay with him that night. Vi and Mira catch up a bit, Mira ever the little detective picking up on things about Vi and Xaden, which leads to a hushed conversation about the wards. She hints at the possibility of something else going on outside the wards, like wyverns. Mira doesn't really buy it though and just kind of brushes off the possibility. Mira and Xaden both are on duty, and Violet is asleep by the time Xaden gets back to his room. She asks some more pointed questions, which he gives partial answers to, frustratingly. Back in Basgiath and history class, we actually learned some real history. It's kind of a nice, refreshing perspective here. Awesome. And now we head to the mat for challenges. Dane, beforehand, tries to talk to Violet, and she basically tells him to F off, literally giving him the finger. However, he uses his position to call for a challenge against her. He finally admits to reading her memory. It was just a flash when Xaden said that he'd been to Athbeen, and Dane told that to his father. He also shares that it was her mother that gave the scars to Xaden. But seriously. Dane lets her up and Rhee starts to dig in for some more answers about what the heck was that all about? Vi tells her about Dane's signet and that he read one of her memories. Rhee is smart though and is starting to ask the right questions about what really happened at Athbeen and what killed Day. Arik saunters over with a broken wrist from his challenge, and Vi uses it as an excuse to leave the conversation and take him to the infirmary. On the way, he mentions how quickly Rhee is catching on, and how leadership hasn't been quote-unquote hiding it well, and as Violet realizes he also knows, his response is, "Why else would I be here?" End section. What?
Dun, dun, dun. Well, thanks, John. Let's get on into it. Over to Lauren with the weather.
Thank you, Kyle. It's raining. Okay, chapter 12. This is the pre-chap where it's a excerpt from one of the letters that Xaden's been writing Violet, and it says, Sigale watched me kill another cadet bullying Garrick during threshing. She says she chose me for my ruthlessness, but I think I remind her of my grandfather. But I want to know more about this whole moment with Garrick, because I love Garrick so much, but someone was bullying him? Rude. First of all.
So rude.
I know. I want to know what's going on there. And then also, I'm kind of just surprised that a dragon would bond Garrick if he needs someone to defend himself. But also, I don't know the whole story. So maybe they were always there together or something. So I just need more from this little moment because I like Garrick. And I feel like he's probably a side character I know the least about. Even though he's mentioned all the time. He's always like, Xaden. Oh, and there's Garrick. And Xaden. And Garrick's here too. And I'm like, I want to know more about Garrick.
My first note here was when she arrives at Samara for the first time to see Xaden. but it's describing how large it is. It's like twice as big as, you know what I'm saying?
Where are we going here, John?
It's like the outpost is twice as large as like Montserrat, or I think it was Montserrat or one of the other outposts that she'd been to or whatever. It described it as a dark red stone cutting into the crisp blue sky, and I just thought that was really sweet. I would love to see a picture, if possible, at some point.
I'll fly there and take one for you.
Thanks. My next note, she sees Xaden, and in her head, she's like, I'm so damn in love with him that it hurts. And for the moment, I can't remember why I'm denying myself. I just said, that's right. Just hand yourself over to it. Just, yes. Don't deny it.
Gotta let the slow burn, John.
The slow burn?
Let the burn be slow.
Oh. Nah. Let's step into the fire, shall we?
It's only section 2 of the book.
What about sex?
If you would like books like that, John, I have some recs.
Oh, yeah. You have Kindle Unlimited.
I do.
And it is unlimited.
Oh, my gosh.
My first note in here, and I talked to Lauren about this earlier because it was a miniature rant that I had with her, but it was someone recognizing Violet, and basically the whole quote is just saying, oh, you're her, aren't you? The writer asks, her appraisal pausing on my hair. Like I said, I was talking to Lauren, I was like, how is this how she's known? Because it's a known fact that the writers have like dyed and wild hairstyles. Who's to say another writer couldn't dye their hair the way hers is done? It's just like an ombre. It's ombre or ombre? Ombre. Dark to white. I feel like that's a pretty common dyeing thing. Someone could just do that. Would they be mistaken for Violet if they did? If Violet dyed her hair, would she never be recognized? Literally last episode, someone died because they said, I'm Violet because of my purple hair. Crack. So, like, why wouldn't a hired assassin just say, no, I know Violet has very specific hair that I'm looking for, if everyone else in the world is like, oh, that's Violet because she has that hair that's put up in a crown.
Well, did it say in the beginning that her hair wouldn't hold pigment or something? I thought they said that she tried to dye it or cut it. But maybe it was only cutting.
Yeah, I know for sure cutting. But even if her hair didn't hold it, someone else could dye their hair that way. So is anybody with that hairstyle or color walking around and having people say like, oh, you're a Soaring Gale, and have to be like, no, oh my gosh, I just like my hair this way, back off.
I don't know. I mean, she's also short for a writer and stuff, so like there's other descriptions.
I guess, maybe. But it always just comes back to the hair.
But I do understand that it is always
I mean, I don't think anybody would want to have their hair match Violet's if they knew who she was, because it's also like she's the general's daughter. She's not just like some random person coming into the quadrant. And both of her siblings have gone through already, and she's been around Basgiath for years. Like she's been living around there, so I think that plays into it as well. But I don't know. I guess we've heard of people having like pink or purple hair, but
well, in that case, it just stinks for all the people who like that hair but feel like they can't wear it because Violet's got it on lockdown.
Justice for people who like ombre hair.
Always going to the hairdresser like, well, I would get it ombre, but just cut it off, I guess.
Justice for ombre.
Anyway, just bothered me.
Gosh. It's valid. So while she is, I guess, having this conversation down in the pit, Xaden's down in the pit. That just came to my head. Okay, sorry. Parks and Rec reference there real quick.
I fight down in the pit.
Thank you. The pit. So, okay, this is a side story. When Kyle met my mom for the very first time, he was wearing a shirt that was said, what's it say, Kyle? What was that group called?
It's just Mouse Rat.
Yeah, the Mouse Rat shirt. Like Andy's whatever. And so my mom just knew that I liked Kyle, and she'd be like, oh yeah, have you still been talking to that Mouse Rat boy? She's called him that Mouse Rat guy.
They asked to meet me in a rush. It wasn't like I better get dressed. It was like, hey, first of all, they said, do you want to meet at McDonald's? So it wasn't like we were going to the Ritz-Carlton. I was like, I just got to get a hoodie on and go. Their parents want to meet me before they head out of town.
But for like a solid year, she just called him the Mouse Rat boy.
Yeah. A year?
It was like, even after we were dating and forever. So whenever our daughter was born, Emma, my mom stayed with us for a couple weeks. The first time we brought Emma to their house, we had her in a Mouse Rat onesie. full circle moment.
That's incredible.
Anyways.
I hope you know that now I can't not picture Zayden as Andy Dwyer in this moment. So it's kind of a weird,
Because in the pit.
a weird visual that I'm.
He doesn't even fall in the pit, does he? Oh yeah, that's how he does. He breaks his leg. That's how the whole show starts.
That's
My
like
bad.
the whole. That's the whole plot. to Parks
I
and
was
Rec.
thinking about how Leslie Knope falls in the pit, but no, Andy does too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler
Anyways.
for the first episode of Parks and Rec.
So sorry, everyone. Go watch it. It's hilarious. Okay, so while Zayden is in the pit, she's watching him fight, and she says, "Stop playing around and end it." I say through the bond, using it for the first time since Ressin, and he goes, "Always so violent." And he thumbs a drop of blood off the split in his lower lip, his gaze flashing to mine, and I swear I see a hint of a smile before he turns on Jarrett. And I'm like, why is this making me like kick and giggle? I'm literally like, always so violent. And, like, having a whole moment while reading this, but I'm totally here for it. However, they are about to like full on make out, which is amazing, but I always keep thinking about the split lip and how like when he's walking up to her all like slow-mo and whatever, and she's like checking him out, and he has to like lick blood off of it, and then they just like full on make out, and that's kind of creepy to me, but you know, that's just my personal.
Not creepy to me, I can tell you that much.
All right. John's face. At least you know she's into it no matter what condition your lips are in.
So the next time you get into a fight, yeah.
Gonna come home with a split lip.
Probably not.
Oh, hello.
Guess what I
Walks
did
in all
today.
slow-mo.
He's singing the pit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so after this whole scene, Violet's thinking to herself, yeah, definitely can't remember why I'm denying myself any part of this man. And I said, me neither, girly. What are you
What are
doing?
you doing?
And then, I forgot I had this note. Zayden says, look at me. He takes my chin between his thumb and forefinger and gently tilts my head back before searching my eyes. My nose said, holy hotness. The chin grab. It gets me every time.
Oh, I'm such a fan.
Ugh.
And then they finally kiss after what seems
Yeah,
like
they
it's
do.
been forever. And she says, God, he tastes like home. And I went,
No!
although I guess it's a step up from a candle smelling like home. But wait, actually a bunch of steps down, because why would he taste like home? The smell of home makes way more sense in this case and is also way less weird.
Oh, he tastes like bookbinding glue. It's not weird.
Yeah, sure.
She knows what it smells and tastes like.
He's like, I know
That makes
Violet's
sense.
coming. I better start licking the books.
Yeah.
She was a glue eating kid. He tastes like
She's a glue
bookbinding
eater.
glue and I guess blood, since his lip is split, is
Yeah.
what home tastes like.
Home.
Love it.
Bookbinding glue and iron. Yum.
Oh, my word.
Good soup.
Gosh.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, while they're full on making out, she says, like, to herself, like a moth to a damned flame. And he says, I'm more than willing to let you burn me.
I love that she was like, that's not what you know what, never mind.
Just let it happen.
But then, like John said in the recap, he cuts things off there and he says, I refuse to use sex as a tool to get you back, not when I want to be here. And he's like pressing her hand to his chest. And I said, big points for Zayden
Yeah.
after the red flag diary in our last couple of episodes.
My man.
He's starting to earn some points back.
Yep.
Well, yeah, he says, last year I would have used any method it took to win you back. But for those 3 days that you were unconscious, all I did was sit there and watch you sleep, thinking of everything I would have done differently. And this is me doing things differently. Oh, Zayden. He's so amazing. Zayden. I just love him. And then this is just something, because we've been talking a lot about Melgren and his signet, and I feel like this is just any clue on Melgren's signet and trying to figure things out. And so this is when they're back in his room, they're both sharpening their daggers, and they have this whole conversation about how the ones that kill the venom are made, the alloy or whatever it is. She says, has there always been these daggers, or have they always been placed in daggers? And he says, no, that started right before the rebellion. My guess is that Melgren had a vision of how an upcoming battle is going to go, and these were essential to his victory. And so, since that battle assumedly hasn't happened, since everyone's still making these daggers everywhere, does that mean Melgren can see the future of some battle 6+ years in the future?
Does it say how an upcoming battle is going to go or was going to go?
This is me copy and pasting from the book. An upcoming battle is going to go, and these were central to his victory. Because, yeah, if it was before the
That's
rebellion,
interesting.
then maybe it would have been...
How it was going to go, and they just kept doing it.
Yeah.
I feel like if he could see outcomes, and maybe this is like...
I'll look it up just
maybe
in case.
his signet got stronger or something, but I feel like if you got a signet and saw the outcome of every battle 6+ years to come, that would be another scenario where you'd be like, what is going on? And someone would come and crack your
Car,
neck.
come break my neck.
You need the chiropractor.
Stop. Edit that out of the podcast. Please don't let that be a thing on the internet.
Leave it in.
Oh, my God.
We're still in the first chapter. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, it does say, my guess was Melgren had a vision of how an upcoming battle is going to go, and these were central to his victory.
But it says is going to go, and these were central to his victory. So I think it might just be a case of sort of mismatched verbiage. Because one is future tense and one is past tense. He had a vision of how an upcoming battle is going to go. That's its own phrase. And these were central to his victory. So these were central to his victory.
I don't know.
Also,
I feel
who
like it
knows?
would have
with
said how it
Melgren?
was going to go. But, I mean, yeah, true.
Who knows how his thing works? Like, can he even change stuff? We've already
Yeah.
gone back
Yeah.
and forth on that, so...
That is interesting, though.
But you would think that if, like, because the next part of the sentence that I didn't include in that podcast episode was that, like, him and Scale started smuggling them. They started smuggling them out, like, shortly
Right.
after they were bonded or whatever, and trying to get them out to, like, the drifts and stuff. So you would think that Melgren would also know that the other side has them. Like, there's so many things that would go into that. Or if he could change, and then he saw that the other side had the daggers, so maybe he would switch to swords or something.
Unless he doesn't know, because there's always 3 or more marked ones
That's true.
going.
I
Like
mean,
when he
that's a
came
good
back,
point.
he was with Garrick and Bodhi.
That's a great
Right?
point.
But he may know that the other side has them in his visions, just not how they get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also the fact that he would have seen these daggers in the future and then thought, I need to make those daggers. So, like...
That is kind of scary.
That's one of those weird time travel things where you have to wonder what truly created the idea for the daggers then, because if he's the
Right.
one who made them because he saw a vision of them, then the idea literally made itself. So
Right.
Crazy.
all you can say is that's so Melgren.
So Melgren.
That's so Melgren. It's the future.
Anytime we talk about Melgren. My only other thing for this chapter was near the very end, where Zayden says, that's all classified, to a direct question that Violet asks him. And I was like, whoa, this is the first question she asked you. What happened to honesty if asked the question she wants to ask, Zayden? Granted, that's classified is honest, but I think it's sort of a cop-out for the info that she's asking for when you claim to be an open book. She asked a question and I was like, oh, here we go. And they're like, that's classified. I was like, Zayden, come on, dude. She literally did what you asked her to do.
Maybe
It's
that's
true.
why he tasted like home if he's trying to be an open book.
All right, chapter 13.
Are you proud of that one?
Yes, I am. Thank you. It was the dead silence afterwards for me. I love you guys so much.
She's
I'm
going to be
crying.
like, Connor, can you edit everyone laughing after my joke, please?
Wow.
That would be funny though if you did like a really hard edit of like laughing and then
Nothing.
stop laughing and then
Crickets,
continue.
crickets,
It's just
crickets.
It's just like 3 seconds of like a clip of us laughing. Really hard stop and hard ending.
Yeah, cuts off weirdly.
All right. Chapter 13. Violet asks Taryn if he knows anything about the wards, and he replies with a snide remark about not being that old. Violet mentions his secret dragon knowledge, and Taryn replies, I'm always holding back secret dragon knowledge, but wards are not among it. This was just like an good to know, as John says, tucking it back there for the
Yeah, taking
future.
it back. That's right.
Putting it in the box.
The box.
The box.
I have a note about that later, too. Taryn and Violet are returning from their trip. It looks like Taryn senses something almost, but he says, "We're being ordered to the practice grounds. Kara and Varish are waiting." And I just went, oh, great, because we knew. Actually, I had kind of forgotten until this part. And then as soon as he said this, I was like, oh, crap. What did Varish say last time they left? That he was going to be contemplating her
Yeah.
He said, I'm going to get
whatever. I don't know. What are you laughing at? Because I can't finish my damn thought.
I'm sorry, I just saw your typo in the next note.
you. What?
Barbaric?
Barbaric?
But I don't want to submit every time.
Testes.
Submit it for testes. I don't want to submit her testes. No one wants that.
This is what you get when you have me put in your notes. Not really going to
You're
spell
not.
check it a whole lot.
All right, I'm sorry. Do you want to finish your note again, and then I'll talk about mine?
And this is when Taryn and Violet, they're returning from their trip to Samara. Taryn gets like a thought or something and talks to Violet and says, "We're being ordered to the practice grounds. Kar and Varish are waiting." And I just went, oh, great.
Boo.
Because we left that whole thing with Varish talking about how he was going to punish her or whatever for not producing Andarno. So I was like, oh, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
Boo.
As they're talking to Varish and Kar, Taryn says to Violet, "This is an example of what happens when dragons choose poorly. Solus should never have given this barbarian more power." And then Varish says, "I don't want to submit her for tests or anything barbaric," as though he'd heard Taryn's words. Which, like, really freaked me out. And my note just said, well, I don't like that. We, like, don't revisit this at all. So, there's that.
I did also
We know what
highlight
his signet is?
Varish's signet is?
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
it. Douchebaggery.
Yeah.
He's,
Could be.
Could
I didn't know if there was like...
who knows?
Could be. I just didn't know if there was like any signets that had to do with like dragon. I don't know.
Dragon... D's.
Whisperer. Okay, Kyle. The fact that we've gotten this far in a series about dragons and we just now heard one of those jokes is pretty impressive for us. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know either.
John, do you know?
No.
Cool. Thanks I'm glad I could check in with you all. Okay, so they go up to the mountain where Violet always like practices her signet with Kar. He makes her do it like a bajillion times. But whenever she does the last one and like literally could not stop the lightning bolt, I think I just stopped breathing. Like I did not remember this part. I mean, I remember like she got punished, but I didn't remember like this specific moment with her not being able to stop and stuff. And just, I don't know. It was super freaky. Obviously glad she's okay. But that whole scene was just wild.
It's so scary.
It's super scary. And then whenever he says, this is Varish who says, "You'll both be indispensable once you come to heal," as in like obey his orders or whatever. Yeah. And I know here was just literally, he's the worst. Can't stand the dude. When Kar comes up to her, because she's like full on burnout, he says, "You are a rare, powerful signet, Cadet Sorengale." She responds, I think she doesn't say it out loud. I think she just says it in her head. "I'm not a signet. I'm a person." And I really wanted to like Kar during this scene because he was very clearly like, this is not it. Like, we should be stopping. You're taking this too far. Like, okay, maybe he's on like team good guy and he's just one of those professors that's kind of hiding it and stuff. But then he says stuff like this and I just don't know. I don't know, because he was set up to be this like evil bad guy, and then Varish comes in and he's obviously worse, so maybe Kar's not so bad. But then he still says something like this where it's like more about the signet than it is the person. So
Yeah. And he's made the same comment about Brennan before.
yeah, that's
that's
true. I forgot about that. But when Taryn literally takes her and dumps her in the water, I just imagine him like sitting there on the side of the like river and just being like, "Brink, dunk, dunk." Like, I don't know. It's just a very funny mental picture for me. Kier says that she needs food now that she's cooled down. So then Aya's there and she said, "A green would know." I just want to know more about why a green would know that you need more food when you get burned out or whatever.
We know that they're like reasonable. I kind of picture them as like the Ravenclaws of the dragon colors. I don't know why they would know that specifically.
It also kind of makes me wonder if Bodhi's dragon was any other color, if she would have said, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Really? We're going to trust a red?
Yeah. Maybe if you had a green, I'd give her some food, but...
That's a good point, too.
And then this is a little bit later as they're helping out Violet on the shore. Bodhi says, I miss him. And then Violet whispers, I miss him too. And they're talking about Xaden because there's like the tree with like the knife marks or whatever in it. But I just thought this was really sweet that they just kind of had this like moment together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or Bodhi.
Bodhi buddy.
I'm really worried something's like, because you had mentioned that one time that like his walk is really similar to Xaden's and all this stuff. Like I'm always worried something's going to happen to Bodhi. I just like him so much.
Bodhi watch.
Oh, yeah, for real. Somebody's got to watch his back.
Somebody's got to watch
Bodhi's
his
body.
Bodhi.
Good job, boys.
One mind.
same
One
thing.
mind. Synergy right here. You're seeing it firsthand.
Okay, so it's the next day, and I think they're at like sparring and stuff, and they're watching Sloane just get totally wrecked. Violet and Imogen, and they're just having this little conversation, and I just really love watching their little friendship growing throughout this whole book, like from them running together, and then all these little side conversations where Imogen's really just kind of being there for her. Because Violet's not telling her actual friends anything, and Imogen kind of knows some stuff. I don't know. We didn't really get a ton from Imogen in the first book other than her just kind of being cutthroat and ruthless. So it's kind of fun seeing more of her kindness on the other side in still her own Imogen type way. But I just like
her.
Imogen.
And then Sawyer takes a bite out of an apple, and my note said, like a normal person. Good job, buddy.
I highlighted this too for the exact same reason. I was dying when I saw your note.
I saw this note, and I think I'm just missing the reference. I don't get why that's important.
Because Xaden was
You
like
don't
peeling his apple.
Oh, okay.
You're the one who made the joke.
Yeah, so because Xaden did it, and I was like, did Sawyer do this too? And I was confused.
We just kept making jokes about how he was always peeling apples with daggers.
Yes, and that's why I was confused. I was like, I remember Xaden doing it weirdly, but I don't remember anything weird about Sawyer except for his metal fork fear. But
Oh, yeah.
I forgot.
a fear
Maybe
of
that's why he's not peeling it with a
Yeah,
dagger.
it's just taking a bite.
that may be true.
Someone in Discord said we should be sponsored by Fruit of the Loom because we reference so much fruit
yeah.
all the time. So Fruit of the Loom, if you're listening.
And we know you are.
And then as they walk out of the sparring matches, they just hear someone shout, now! And it says, before I can react, a bag is thrown over my head, and in one breath, I'm unconscious. Womp womp.
Womp womp. Into chapter 14. This whole first section, they come to, and Professor Grady gives them these water skins to drink from. Violet's noticing that something tastes off about it. And in her head, she's like, Professor Grady really needs to take better care of his skins. And I just highlighted that whole paragraph and was like, I'm screaming, don't drink it. You're the one who's poisoning everybody else. Taking people out with like obscure herbs and stuff.
I laughed so hard when I was putting in my notes because I thought you were saying it as Professor Grady really needs to take better care of his skins, like his body, like he needs a shower or something. And you're like screaming. I thought that was so funny
Get this guy some lotion.
because that's the only part you put in the notes. I'm so sorry. I'm like crying about everything I'm laughing at today. Anyways, I agree. The water skins are gross. But apparently Professor Grady's skin is also gross. So.
But it's not that they were gross. It was that they were poisoned.
Right, yeah.
I just could not get over the fact that she just drank it and was like, that's weird. Whatever.
Not the best water I've had on campus, but it'll do.
And then they're describing the team up between everybody. Riders and infantry for fighting, a scribe to record the event, and healers for the obvious reasons. I believe this is the first time that we hear that scribes are maybe stationed at outposts or something for recording purposes. Like I was thinking, do they go out on like runs when riders go on patrol? Like how in depth are they a part of that process? Because then if you think like if a team goes out on patrol or something and something happens and a scribe isn't like with that party, then they just have to take their word for it. Like if they come back and like tell them what happened, if they're going to record it, which I just thought was kind of super interesting.
Yeah, is that when it says like a second hand
Maybe that's what it is.
account,
Yeah.
something, yeah.
And in that respect, too, I literally just thought this as you're saying that. Do we get any sort of description on if the infantry or the scribes or the healers themselves were bagged and dragged out here? Or was someone just like in the scribe quadrant being like, hey, you got to go to this class and record what they're doing sort of thing?
I don't know about the healers or the scribes, but I know the infantry because she had mentioned that they all have the same sword and that their pack always has whatever it had for like cooking and stuff like that in it.
Like
So
they're
they were
always
ready
prepared
to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of honestly took that as a regulation sword because that's what I feel like the infantry would do is just like, here's a mass-produced sword for you to use regardless of where you are.
Yeah, but she was saying like maybe they have more that is fit to them. They just didn't have it on their person.
But for this, for the scribes and the healers specifically, I was wondering because there wouldn't, I don't think, be a reason to blind a scribe and bring them out blindly into this.
Yeah.
Over just being like, who wants to volunteer to get lost in the woods?
Lost in the woods.
Well, and the scribe was like, they're specifically not on the, is it like the adept track or
The
whatever?
adept path,
those are
Yeah,
the
that they were
path.
trying to do the other one.
So yeah,
I
maybe they
guess-
do know what they're signing up for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does say the infantry and the riders are like introducing themselves, and then it says the pleasantries are cut short as Professor Grady marks something in a folder and clears his throat. And he's like, well, now that you're all awake, and then he like welcomes them, but then it says he steps away from a woman, revealing 2 cadets in pale blue. Good. He steps away from a woman who must be the infantry professor, revealing 2 cadets in pale blue sitting beside a scribe. Kind of sounds like they all got there and just waited for the riders and infantry to wake up.
But also, none of them knew how they got there. Or, like, at least they didn't speak up because they were all debating, did they get there by horse? Because, you know, what woods would they be in if a horse got them there compared to a dragon? And, like, none of those three mentioned, we were awake the whole time and we got here by horse. You know, like...
Yeah, I don't know.
But a little bit later here, I think this is kind of just toward the end of the professors explaining everything, and like their objective is to find the location marked on the maps and secure it. Once they find it, they'll be extracted. But as I was like reading through this, I think it was Grady was kind of talking through what each of them do, basically, like what the infantry can be used for, like how the riders can kind of help, like how they're all like supposed to work together. I was like, what does the infantry even do, though? Like, I mean, if the riders can get down off their dragons, like we've seen them do often in real battle, then the infantry, I guess, are just like reinforcing ground support, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like the infantry is like the regular army of some sort, and then the riders are like special ops.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think in the first book, it even said something to the effect of like, one of you is worth a whole platoon of them or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Violet said something about how like a lot of the dragon riders die in Basgiath and then they survive or whatever outside of that, as where the infantry, there's like thousands of them and then they just die a whole bunch when they get out.
Yeah.
It's almost like the opposite. So I don't know. Apparently they're just there to die.
Yeah. That's what I mean, though. Like, they're just kind of like, what are they even... Yeah.
Well, she's also said they're training the riders on how to do like the rolling dismount, like how to get off their dragon quickly if they need to be on the ground. But then doesn't she say in her POV, like, if they really knew what was out there, they would know they shouldn't be that far away from their dragon. Like, the goal should be to be on their dragon or as close to them as possible at all times.
Yeah.
Even though they're preparing them, I guess, for how to dismount quickly if they need to. The goal would be to stay with them. And then, I guess infantry would be handling whatever's happening on the ground and protecting citizens and stuff. I mean, that would all be...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
The grunt
Be
work.
them. I don't know.
Well, and I doubt like the riders are at the outposts doing the laundry and the cooking. You know what I mean? I would think that's probably like the infantry people doing some of those and some of the night watches. And then it sounds like the riders are doing like the actual fly around sweeps.
It just like makes me think if like some griffins attack or something, like they're just literally screwed, bro. Like what? Like what are they gonna do?
Ring the bell and go underground.
Yeah.
To the pit.
Guess we'll just have some fights while the dragons are handling business.
Okay, so we're introduced to this new little concoction that they're apparently very proud of, that they've just developed to cut off the connection. Yeah, to cut off the connection between the writer and their dragon. This was Grady that says, frustrating as it is, we're actually pretty proud of this concoction, so let us know if you feel any side effects. And I was like, okay, yeah, nothing like some students to just use as guinea pigs. Like, what would have happened if this was too extreme and like their bond was severed somehow? Like, I don't know that they could even do that, but like, okay.
Yeah, I just had here like, what the F is this, dude? Like, this is nuts. Kind of just to go along with your note, like, okay, this is weird.
And they didn't even know it existed.
It seems
freaky.
A little extra for what they're doing too. Like, I get they're saying like, oh, we don't want you to talk to your dragons, but I feel like you could just say, don't talk to your dragons during this exercise, and maybe the dragons would respect that. But who knows? Dragons
do not answer to the whims of men.
Yeah, that's fair. My next note was just Dyer saying, "You'll be all right." I just put Dyer, the one who dies. Surely it can't be that easy.
But Dyer survived.
Yeah, he did. So yeah, it was not that easy.
This time, yeah.
For now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
On the subject of names, this was, how do you really say it?
It's pronounced Effie.
Effie. So when she was first introduced, it says Effie. They drag scribes into RSC, and a couple of notes here I just put, that's my wife, or is it wifey? It was either wife or wifey for me. That's how I said it.
I get you.
Definitely not Effie.
And if you have only listened to the audiobooks, Effie is spelled Aoife.
Yeah.
So it took me
That's
a
my
second when
wife.
I saw John's note, and then I was like, oh, he's thinking like a wife.
A wife. Yeah.
One vowel away from all of them in their name. Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, Ayufi?
Yeah. When you said it in the pronunciation guide, I just went, like, I literally was like, taken aback.
It can't
like,
be that
what?
easy.
Yeah. But all right.
How they say it.
All right, then.
Speaking of names, I just love how Violet remembers people's names. She does this all the time. Like, this is not the first time we've talked about it, or I don't think the last time it happens, but just calling some of the cadets cadet asshole and cadet
Spoilers.
quiet and all the things.
I will say that Cadet Quiet, awesome nickname. Like, if I heard someone call me that, I'd be like, I love it. That's such a cool name for someone in the infantry, especially if you are going into like special ops or something. Great call sign
like
to go
spy.
by. Yeah.
I feel like if someone called you Cadet Quiet, though, you'd just be like,
Yeah. I would forever wonder, are they telling me to be quiet, or are they calling me quiet?
Yeah, quiet.
What do they want out of this?
Just don't say anything.
I probably wouldn't anyway.
Well, this next part made me laugh out loud. Literally, it says their squad leader in the infantry is our equivalent of Atos. Riddick murmurs from the right side. She nods to keep from chuckling, but it says Cohen throws his head back on Riddick's right and does not bother suppressing his laugh. So guess Dane's reputation carries across the wings. I was like, of course it does. I just think it's very funny. There's little interaction between all the different sections of the college and stuff, except for maybe like the unification party was when they were all together that one night and they all like basically slept together.
Yeah.
But outside of that moment,
all of them.
just everybody. But I just think it's funny that everyone thinks Dane is an a-hole, not just us. So
not just us. So there's a part where Violet can't really catch her balance, or she like wobbles on a little divot in the ground or something, but it says ribbit.
That's a weird thing for her to say.
I can't jump. This frog needs to leap. Ribbit.
My knee is in so much pain. Ribbit.
The frog can't leap with a bad knee. Ribbit. Oh my god.
Thank God.
oh, that was a good one. She's crying again. She's
done.
out of here.
She's done for a few minutes.
Oh man.
That was a great one. Bloopers on this episode are top tier.
Freaking ribbit.
All of our artist listeners, please draw a frog as Violet Soaringale and mail it to Connor's P.O. Box.
Yeah, please do. Oh my god. If you're a frog enthusiast.
A little frog riding on Taryn's back.
Ribbit.
Ribbit. Come back, Connor.
Oh my God.
So sorry. This was actually a really sweet note. Okay. So Violet loses her balance for a second, and it says, Riddick grabs a hold of me before I can fall, then steadies me without a word as we continue the climb. Thank you, I say softly. Riddick asks, are your knees wrapped? And there's concern lining his forehead. And this isn't the only time, but he keeps like checking on her and making sure that she's stable and that she's wrapped her knees and that her needs are being met. And I had to highlight this, and I wrote, he's taking care of her just like Liam said. Because in Fourth Wing, we were laughing about it at the time, but there's a part where Liam looks at Riddick and he says, guard her like you're me. And then Riddick says, you mean like I'm 6 inches taller and built like a bull? And he gives him like a sarcastic thumbs up. And he goes, sure, I'll do my best. Then it's really sweet that Liam's gone and Riddick is with her. And he's like actually really taking care of her. And I just thought it was really sweet.
That is sweet.
I miss Liam.
Love him. I love
I
both
love
of them.
Riddick. Yeah. Oh, speaking of Riddick, this line just made me laugh. Riddick's talking to one of the infantry guys that's like, what, you think you're above everyone else? And he goes, I mean, technically when we're flying, we are above everyone. But if you're asking if I'm better than you, the answer is obviously yes.
Riddick.
He has so many good lines.
And then as they are traipsing through wherever they are, at this point, as they were walking through, I'm like, dude, they need to shut the hell up with all this bickering. It's just giving away their position. Bunch of amateurs.
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys doing? They've been talking like this whole time. They've been like jabbering back and forth with the infantry and everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like literally this moment leads them over the cliff to where they see
To
Bade.
Yep.
Jack
Freaking Bade.
Barlow's dragon. And my note
Jack
here was,
Barlow.
Jack, go away. Nobody wants you here.
Yeah.
Scram.
Scram. They don't want you.
I forgot. I had thought this, but I didn't actually note it. But his dragon being alive was also something that I was like, oh, well, maybe he still is. Because they always say, like, when your rider dies and you're really close to your dragon might die. So I took that as a, well, maybe he still is if his dragon's fine.
He was still first year. They weren't bonded for very long.
I guess. It just cried when he died, too. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm taking it as a little bit. He was on my list of possibles for Nolan last time, so.
Oh, right. Ooh.
Yeah.
Right.
John?
Right.
Right.
Well, we'll just say about that then, won't we?
Drink my sherry and have a little thought about this, right?
All right, chapter 15. This is the pre-chap. This made me really mad at Brennan because the pre-chap is from the Book of Brennan or whatever and says there's a course second year that I can't tell you about other than to say that it's hell. My only advice, don't piss off anyone else's dragon, which is convenient because Bade just showed up. But literally his whole book is here's all the secrets and passageways and how to cheat and do every other class, but not going to tell you about this one. I feel like that's like
Rude.
setting them up for super failure. And then it also made me wonder earlier when we were talking about the concoction to make them lose their bond with their dragons. If it's a new thing, only because Professor Grady was asking if there's any side effects. Maybe that specifically wasn't a thing when Brennan.
I think Taryn said it
Yeah,
was a
that's
new
true.
thing.
Yeah, so
like
maybe
new that year.
that's why he didn't write about it. So that made me not hate him as much here in this moment. But like, you could at least warn them. Whatever. I was just a little annoyed at Brennan in this
Brennan.
moment. Like, you're gonna give him secrets for literally everything except for the one class that seems to be like more life or death. But whatever.
I mean, for all he knows, he's writing this book for a sister that could die the first year. So who's to know if she's ever going to make it far enough to read the secret?
Well,
Good luck.
yeah, I mean, you're gonna take the time to write this sentence. You could at least give a little bit. I don't know.
Give her a little bit.
And
Yeah.
she saw Brennan. Like, all right, you're going back to your second year. By the way.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. Yep.
And Zayden.
Yeah.
Or, like, there's so many
Right?
people who could be helping her out. And I get that it's, like, a whole thing or whatever, but, like, you're all literally anti this whole entire country and continent and or whatever you're
Yeah.
going to call everyone. Yet you're not
I think
going to help.
It would probably be good, though, because if one of them slipped up and they were like, oh, yeah, I knew about this class, and they were like, oh, yeah, the class where we beat information out of you, guess we're going to find out who told you. And we're just going to torture you till you tell us who told you about this class.
Or, like, that Zayden could be like, I'm not telling you all this stuff because I know you're literally about to be tortured. And then she could be like, okay, I understand. Tell me afterwards or something.
But that's what he's been saying about Dane. Like, if Dane were to touch her face, that's kind of been his excuse. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like if they're not on the same page as the college, they could have at least given a heads up.
Yeah, or a little
or the
hint
dragons. Like, I'm kind of surprised the dragons don't say anything about it.
That's a good point, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know if this counts as a spoiler for Throne of Glass, but I just had a little Throne of Glass flashback here where Dyer says to Violet, anything you need, I'm at your service. I owe you a life debt. And I was like, having Aelin flashbacks here. Let's call in that life debt after everyone's forgotten about it in the final hour.
They magically show up.
Pretty much immediately after that conversation, another Riddick line was him just taking Dyer back and saying, I'm going to take life debt back to camp. And I was like, solid.
I love that. This is just another moment of me being obsessed with Rhiannon and just loving her as a friend because she's amazing. She finally confronts Violet about whatever's been going on, and clearly Violet's keeping stuff from her. And she says, I'll be here when you're ready because your friendship is precious to me. But please, for the sake of that friendship, don't insult me by lying. I love her so much. And I love that even when she's frustrated, she's like still being so upfront with her and trying to give her chances to be truthful or like try to understand, but like she's giving her some I guess a heads up at this point that she's like, I love you, but also I'm pissed off right now. Once the group gets their connections back with their dragons and Violet asks Taryn about the concoction, he says, it's a new development this year, one I do not care for. I could hear you, sense you, but you could not reply. So it's good to know at least that they like still can't do anything to affect dragon magic. But it is really disconcerting to know that they could mess with the humans and like their side of the bond and just completely cut them off like that, even though the dragons could still hear them.
Yeah, because it like completely subdued their signet and all that too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like for me, my first thought here was it's like they're testing ways to gain control of the riders, like away from the dragons, which obviously don't like that at all. It's because it seems like it's almost like a fail-safe kind of thing for like leadership. Be like, well, if anything goes wrong or if we end up getting into a position where we don't agree with what the dragons are doing, then we can just like boom, send this out to all the riders, and then they're just they don't have like any connection anymore.
Yeah, instead of spending their time and energy on how to defend their country from some actual enemy. Yeah. They're just trying to make the people in their country. And like just have more control over the people who are currently in the wards instead of whatever's outside of it.
It's crazy, man.
It is good to know though that Taryn said he can still hear and sense her though. So like she could have still called for help and he would have heard that. She just wouldn't know when help is coming.
Yeah, I'm just annoyed that they accepted another drink from the dude. Like, you just don't take random drinks, especially like the first one, maybe, but any after that, girl. Come on,
poison me once, shame on you.
Yes, exactly. Even though like obviously this one like brought back all the stuff, you should still have questioned. Like before I take a drink of this, what is it? Like,
as he's picking them back up. More water, anyone? You've been in the woods for a while.
Sprinkle something inside.
Well, speaking of drinks, when you settle into your reading time with your favorite beverage, whether it's coffee, wine, or something a little stronger, I always think to myself, there's something missing. The perfect candle. A little flame, a little fragrance. And that's where Mood Reader Candles comes in. Mood Reader Candles is our go-to for that little cozy curl-up worthy candle. And we know you'll love them as much as we do. So you can get 10% off your order with the code FRIENDS10 at checkout. FYI, this code doesn't apply to bundles or already discounted items. But trust me, add a little flame and a little fragrance and you'll never want to step out of whatever book you're reading. Grab yours now at moodreadercandles.com. And now into chapter 16, and this is when Jesinia is showing Violet the scribe's diary from their RSC navigation debacle. Jesinia mentions the tricky thing is to capture the truth and not just an interpretation. Stories can change depending on who tells them, and I was like, oh, this sounds a lot like her dad. This was crazy when she said this. I was like, oh man.
Yeah. But I'm also so glad that Jasinia's picking all of that up on her own.
Same.
Yeah. And she's like realizing these things. Because how many scribes have gone through this college and just missed all of this. Like, she's clearly on a different intellectual level than others around, which is equally
or they've
good,
just not cared,
but also dangerous.
Yeah, I was gonna say not caring is a thing too. Just making money, getting through the day.
Right. Yep.
That's true. Or died because they said something.
Oh,
True.
Oh my.
But with this, Violet asks her, have you recorded any of the books I've asked for this year? And she says no. Before Violet even knew it, they were playing a super risky game. Like, she knew she was risking stuff, but Jasinia's doing it just as equally, which is super scary. So Kyle kind of called that the two of them were going to get into some sort of trouble. I don't know, stressing me out. They're doing that. Then we go back to sparring, and Sloane is again not trying, really. Whether or not she thinks she doesn't need help because she thinks she's actually good, or she's just refusing because it's Violet or because it's Imogen or whatever. I don't really know, but girl's struggling. And then Violet finally says, I have 50 of the letters that Liam wrote for you, and at the end of every week that you attend, like, help with Imogen and participate in whatever she thinks you need, I will give you one. It's up to you, Sloane, to show up, train, and live, and you get another letter, or don't. So, first of all, I'm just really proud of Violet for trying to help Sloane, even though Sloane's just a total jerk. This still, like, threw me off so much when I read it the first time, because for, like, however long, we all thought Sloane and Violet would be best friends forever. And then Sloane just straight up hates Violet's guts. So it's still, like, wild to me a little bit. But Liam wrote her, like, a letter a week, because he was only there a year, assumedly that their calendar's the same, because they talk about October and January and all these other months. So the fact that he has 50 letters for her is, I don't know, just
it's really sweet.
It is.
Sweet, perfect man.
I know. He was. That's what got him killed.
Gone too soon.
Being perfect.
She almost gets beat down again, but this is after Violet kind of does her little herbal assistance for Sloane, and Imogen is talking to her about it afterwards, and she's like, oh, that's how you survived so long last year during the challenges. And she said, truthfully, you're effing clever. Way more clever than I gave you credit for. I bet you keep him, speaking of Xaden, constantly annoyed. She says, how glorious. I just thought that was both awesome and hilarious, that she was just like so joyed about her being such a, probably giving Xaden a hard time. Yeah.
It's giving little sister energy.
My note was, that's one word for what she keeps Xaden: annoyed.
So Varish and Cronies show up to her room, to Violet's room, to check her bag. And Varish says, funny that most of these assaults seem to be focused on those of you who disappeared during the war games, don't you think? And I mean, this specifically, but during this entire interaction, really all of his interactions, my brain is just like, he is such a Dolores Umbridge. It's like all I can picture him as. Literally everything that comes out of his mouth, I'm like, ugh, Umbridge.
Yeah.
Well, and even when he's not talking, he always has like a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Because of the smile, I honestly pictured more of a Cheshire Cat vibe, and I don't know, like just a too big of a smile sort of thing all the time.
That's fair. Yeah. Then we end this chapter with Violet showing up at Samara, and Xaden's on 24-hour duty, and she doesn't have clearance. That's like the last line. You laughing at duty?
yeah, I did too.
But I'm like, she shows up, she doesn't get to see him again, and I'm just, my note here was, I am already so sick of them being separated. I miss Xaden.
Me too.
I want him back.
Yeah. And starting chapter 17, Emo and Violet are chatting, and
Emo.
You mean Imogen, or do you
Yes.
mean someone who is emo?
no, Emo.
Well, it says it.
Oh. Well, I'm just, sorry.
And
How dare you?
Sorry, I'm not reading your notes. I'm just listening to you talk.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Violet asks her a question or something, or they're just talking about her and Xaden and their romantic involvements wherever they are. And Imogen says, one, we're not talking about my love life. I have Quinn, my actual friend, for that. And I was like, you don't mean that, Imogen. You don't mean it. You're just kidding. You're just playing around. She loves it. She loves that friendship.
Yes. She does. I really love everything that she says in this whole section, but this one part in particular where they're using this whole battle axe in the armoire metaphor for some reason.
Metaphor.
Classic. But Imogen says, if you don't think Xaden was hiding more than a few battle axes, then you're mad at the wrong person because you lied to yourself. And I was like, I know that's right. She's like, you fell in love with him. Like, you know who he is. You can't be surprised that he has secrets.
Like, literally the whole first book, she's just like, but he's full of secrets and his shadows because he has secrets. And then she's mad that he has secrets.
A secret? How dare you?
It's very Kay Oliver.
Honestly, it really is. Dang it. It's okay. I love Kayla and I love Violet, so it's fine. But she does say, and you asked if I wanted to talk about your relationship, which implies that you damn well know that you're still in one.
Right.
I was like, yes. You tell her the things,
it.
Imogen.
Yes.
And then she pretty much like gives her the deal like flat out here right before they go into class, which I love. And Violet like kind of tries to cut in, but she says, I'm still speaking. And then it says, a third year from first wing gets too close and she shoves his shoulder. And the picture of this is so hilarious. Oh my gosh. I
think they're on the stairs too. So like, did she just shove him down the stairs?
He just
have any of you guys watched Peaky Blinders? The first episode of like season 3 or 4, the main character is getting married and he brings like all the guys of the family down to like their kitchen and he's like, this is my effing wedding day. There will be no this, there will be like no drinking, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He's like really hitting hard on there will be no fighting. Toward the end of him talking, one of the waiting staff or server staff like comes through and he like bumps into him. And this is what he does. He like bumps into him after he's just told everybody to stop fighting and just literally just shoves him across the room. And this is the first thing it made me think of. It was like, oh my gosh, so hilarious. And then while they're here, she sees Ree kind of like off a little bit, like over by the stairwell or whatever, and she's like reading something. Violet goes to like check on her, and it's a letter from her parents, and her parents also sent her like a little notice or whatever. It was like a warning about like don't let in strangers kind of thing that she got from her parents. And as they're reading and talking about it, Professor Markham just like comes up and he's like, what do we have here? And just like snatches it out of her hand, and I'm like, he really didn't seem to be the kind of person to do something like this, like in Fourth Wing. He seemed like, I don't know, like a respectable professional person. And it's like, now he's just kind of turning into a huge douche. And I don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, part of me thought that like, because I read your note and I was thinking about it, like Violet saw him first year as like this mentor and someone she looked up to, someone she wanted to work under for the rest of her life. So maybe he was kind of acting like this, but because it was from her POV and she just thought him to be like the best, that it was all just kind of like with rose-colored glasses type of a thing.
True.
And now that she knows that he's a big fat liar and she literally hates the man, now we're seeing it from this other side where he's maybe still acting the same, but it's with this like more like douchebaggery.
She sees through it more now that she like knows that he's pretty much just.
No one else is acting like he's acting out of character or is seeming, you know, like something else is weird going on. It just seems to be Violet is, you know, like.
Yeah.
Well, it's that, and Markham knows that she was at Resson. They had a whole little moment at the beginning of this book that we talked about where like it seemed like he was making this direct eye contact with her and trying to suss out like if she was going to say anything. So I feel like he knows that she knows that it's not all correct information anymore. And I feel like part of this hostility or tension is him kind of almost testing her or like seeing if she's going to say anything.
Yeah. Well, you would think like most of the first reports, he's the one who sees those. Like he's the like main dude of the scribes, so like any report that comes through and then he decides if it gets changed or redacted or what gets actually sent to the king himself. He's literally like bad guy number one for information.
Okay.
And then this is my last note for this chapter section where Violet thinks to herself, are any of my professors actually trustworthy? And I was like, great question, baby.
Yep.
You keep thinking that.
Yep.
When you know, let us know.
Yes. Keep using that scribe brain. And then that takes us to the pre-chat blurb for chapter 18. Pre-chat. Listing off this secondhand account. And then the translation, and then the translation and the redaction of the Journey of the First Six, which I'm reading it and I'm laughing, but I'm also like, oh no, like, this is both hilarious and terrible. So ridiculous.
This like whole book and this whole series, it just makes me like question the actual book I'm reading. Like, I feel like what I'm reading, I'm like so into this story and I freaking love Fourth Wing and like this whole series and all this stuff. But then I'm like, what I'm reading actually real? Or is this all just like a made up story that I'm supposed to believe? And then later she's going to be like, gotcha. You know, like I have no idea. And so then it's like, I love it. And I'm equally scared of literally everything I'm reading. And it's just really stressful.
The whole 5-book series is just a big prank that Rebecca Yarros is pulling on all of us.
Right? We're going to end. I have already like 4 copies of Onyx Storm and like 3 copies of Fourth Wing. And she'll be like, thanks, guys.
Thanks for the ride.
Exactly.
My next note here is when Violet and Xaden are finally reunited and she, in passing, calls him beautiful or something like that. His slow smile stops my heart. He says, "You think I'm beautiful?" And for some reason, when I read this, I pictured the slowness of the sloth from Zootopia. Like him smiling. I don't know why.
That slow?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
When he understands the joke.
He's like,
I don't know why. Yeah.
And Violet
His
just sits
face
there
lights
through
up.
all of it, letting it happen.
I don't know why. That's just what made me think. And then she's just describing, as always, like how he looks and what he's wearing and
beautiful
all
he
this
is.
stuff. And it says, revealing the short sleeves of his summer uniform and indecently toned arms. And I just thought, I enjoyed this description. Like the use of indecently, I thought was just like really clever here. I liked it.
so good. And then a tick of his jaw later. Cheers.
Is that the first one in this section?
I feel like it is.
I think so.
First,
Crazy.
but not the last.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a few more, I think.
And then when Xaden and Violet are having this mind-to-mind argument while they're standing in the doorway, and Rhiannon and Riddick and Sawyer are all just like standing there watching it happen.
Like the fact that they just sit there and let it happen that long too.
Yes, it's like I just couldn't stop laughing reading their whole conversation back and forth because it's so much italics. Like they are just talking and talking, like they're going at it back and forth. And then all of a sudden, I think it's Sawyer is like, "What's happening?" And then someone's like, "I think they're fighting." They're just staring at each other.
I feel like that's what
so
was
good.
needed in any other book where people talk in their minds and the characters around them do nothing. This one actually mentioned it.
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of the time it's like a line or two, or they're kind of actively participating in whatever's happening while they're still talking mind to mind. But this was like they're just looking at each other like full on in the middle of a conversation. It was so good.
Well, and then the conversation ends with Rhee asking like, "Do you want to go with us to Shantara?" And she's like, "No, I have to do my reading and all this stuff, but I'll let you know if I need your help bearing a body later." And Rhee eventually says, "I'll do it too." And then she looks at Xaden and goes, "I've never moved anything as big as you, but I bet my signet could put you in the ground without even disturbing the dirt if I'm pissed enough." And I was like, first of all, what a best friend. Like, you are literally the best person ever.
Ride or
Help your
die.
friend hide the body. Absolutely. And then also to stand up to Xaden that way, because it's Xaden who was literally her wing leader last year and everybody's super scared of. And also like to think that maybe her signet could actually do something like that and move things into the ground or through so much stuff without actually disturbing it. Maybe one day, or if she was actually pissed enough, is really cool. So
My next note here is when Xaden is right after this, when Xaden and Vi run into Nolan. And they're kind of talking with him briefly, and he happens to say, "It's hard work mending a soul." And I was like, what? My first thought here was like, are they trying to cure a venin, quote unquote? That was my first thought.
Yeah. I sort of half jokingly just put, "They're ripping Barlow straight out of hell, they are." But Lauren and I talked about this one a little bit too, and I do have another thought, but I see you have one too. So you go ahead and do yours. I'll see if it is.
When I saw that you said Barlow, my thought was just that, like, that dude's got to be messed up, though. Mm-hmm. Like, his body.
Yeah.
Like,
Barlow,
how are they
like,
going to...
from the fall?
Bro. Like, even if they recovered him, like...
Yeah.
He's got to be flattened. I don't know how they're going to do that.
why would you guys
So-
want that though? Like, why is this our hope?
That would be crazy. That would be crazy, though. If they brought him back,
Yeah.
zombie Jack Barlow.
Oh, yeah. Zombarlo.
He's like
Zombarlo.
Frankenstein and has like little stitches across
and
different.
staples
Yeah.
and stuff.
No, my thought was, because I was talking about with Lauren earlier about like all the Nolan things. She was saying like, well, is that what mending a soul means? Is like raising them from the dead and back in the body? And I sort of said like, well, maybe they are doing something with a venom they captured, like how you said. And I forget how we got on the train of thought to this point, but eventually I was like, is it possible? Because you become venom by, drawing power from the earth. Is it possible that Jack, in his last moments, was like, I'm not dying like this, and tried to draw power from the earth, and that is the part of him that they are trying to heal out?
Nice, interesting.
That would have to be like a very quick split decision.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
That's a very fast
I don't know if he needs to be
action.
touching the ground to do it, but if he got crushed
Right, yeah.
and was under the rocks and just...
Like if he got stuck.
Yeah, he got stuck, and that's the only thing he could do was draw
Interesting.
power from there. And that would give Bade another reason to cry like she did, is like, oh, why are you doing this? Sort of thing.
I do remember my first thought of venom was because I think it was in the book that she was reading when she described
Yeah.
the venom. It mentioned that the more they do it, they like lose their soul or something.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
immediately was like, oh man, venom for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the other thing, is because it said, like, their reddish eyes or whatever, and then Lauren and I brought up that, like, whenever he attacked her and he was doing something to, like, crush her head or whatever in the fight, his eyes were very red. So that was something early on that I was like, oh, is he, like, dipping into... Does one dip into that power turn you into venom, or is it, like, if you do it too much,
It's like a
you
process.
turn into venom?
That's what I assumed, I think, early on when we got through...
Yeah.
Or when we read through some of those descriptions, if you like would continually, what do they
Lean
call it,
into
like
it.
channel and
Yeah.
stuff, you'd eventually kind of turn into it fully or whatever. Interesting though. I'm not sure if I caught that.
Which that also reminds me of, I don't think we had talked about it in the episode at the time. I think it was presentation day in the first book. And Violet was saying like, yeah, one time my mom came back from wherever she was stationed and her eyes were red and I like freaked out and I said she turned venom or something. And my dad had to calm me down or like whatever it was that she said.
Yep. And Lauren also brought up the third person that had red eyes.
You brought up, I just confirmed.
Was it the scent assassin?
Yeah, it was the scent assassin, but you were the one who brought it up because I was like, oh, there's the two people, and you were like, no, there's three, and I was like, who was the third? Because I didn't remember, but it
I
was
forgot
the
about that.
assassin sent to kill Violet as well.
And what happened to him? She killed
He
him.
died.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
stabbed him in the kidney.
Yep, forgot about that.
Literally just went to town on the kidneys until he fell over.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm even more sold after this section that Barlow's a big contender for coming back in some form. Maybe as a full venom that she could recognize, or just as a somewhat healed, like he said, sort of Frankensteinish zombie Jack. Or maybe it's going to be like Ba Sing Se in Avatar, where he'll come back and he's just all happy and cheery. And they're like, there's nothing wrong in this college. What are you talking about? I'm all fine and dandy.
Oh my God.
Or the fall knocked the stupid out of him and he's actually nice.
Would you like an orange?
Is that what it is, Kyle? He's not allergic to oranges anymore?
Yep.
Reversed his
He
allergy.
got healed of everything.
Oh. My word. Well, my note here was that Riddick's theory is that they're just using Nolan for the interrogations. Like they're interrogating all the second years and like just wrecking them, using Nolan to heal them and stuff. Because they had heard that, I guess, Farish had done that before with another mender or something. But she does say, I'm not sure if he was being serious or not, because it's hard to tell with Riddick, which is like also just funny. You never know what Riddick, if he's telling the truth or not, or if he's just joking.
That'll serve him well in interrogation. He'll just say anything and they're like, I don't know, dude. This guy.
It's Riddick. Who knows? Just punch him again. Well, Satan and Violet get close to, I guess, the archives. Violet is trying to like argue the fact that talking to Jasenia is going to be okay. And she says, because she's an old friend. And his response was, well, so is Atos. And I'm just like, oof, that this whole book just stresses me out. Because, like, if Jasenia goes full Dane on us, and, like, I mean, we kind of learned that Dane didn't do it on purpose necessarily, but, like, just says the wrong thing. Like, I don't know. My hands are super sweaty because I get stressed. I'm just talking about it now. I'm super stressed out. Like, literally, we'll be watching a movie, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, my hands are so sweaty. I'm freaking out. Like, that's just how it gets for me.
That's how I know it's a good
and
movie.
I can't. Yeah, I can't. Anyways.
I will say again, though, at least we know she survives because she's written all these books so far. So up until a point, she's good.
Maybe.
Maybe not good, but she survives.
Unless it's just someone named after her.
Yeah, but
That's
why would you
very
name
true.
someone after a traitor?
I don't know. Why would you name a dragon Little Lies?
Got him.
You're right.
circle.
I just don't have all the answers.
Neither do
None of us
I.
do. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah. Well, the response to this whole conversation was Zayden's jaw flexes. So, Tariq, John, you were prepping that for a really long time. I'm so sorry.
Well,
And then this is just some more bonus points for Zayden at the end of their conversation in chapter 18. He says, no good can come of the things I want to say right now, Violet. So instead of digging a deeper hole with words I will regret later, I'm going to take some space and do something productive because this is not. My note said, respect.
no tea.
Respect.
I appreciate this.
Yeah.
And moving into chapter 19, my first note for this one was in the pre-chat blurb. Dragons do
Pre-chat?
not answer to the whims of men. And as soon as I read this, I was like, effing right they don't. That's how you gas up a chapter. Let's read, baby. I was so excited after I read this. Ooh. I was like, yes, something sweet's going to happen. And it does. They're on the flight field. They're getting ready for maneuvers. And she sees Farish, of course, and he's got that stupid ass grin on his face. And she says, like he's
Ass grin?
Yeah, a stupid ass grin. He's got that stupid ass grin on his face. Like he's mentally, she says, like he's mentally tabulating how many strikes he's going to make me wield in punishment for not producing an Indarna. Seriously, what would even happen if Taryn ate this guy? Like, I don't think Solace would decide to do anything, to be honest. I don't think he could take Taryn. I think he knows it.
Yeah.
You know, so I was just like, just do it. Just get it over with. Anyway.
Yeah, really.
And then I don't remember when this was. I know it was an interaction with Rhiannon and Violet. Oh, I think it's when she says she's fine. And Rhiannon is like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, that's what you tell me every time, pretty much. And Violet's head, she's like, no matter what I say right now, it's always the wrong thing. She's never going to forgive me for keeping all this from her once she finds out. That just made me really sad. Like, I hope she starts opening up to Ree more, because it's like between her and Zayden not getting to see each other, and then she's like not able to be truthful with Rhiannon. It's like she's keeping everybody in the dark, and it's just like tell somebody something. That's driving me crazy over here.
Well, especially
Ree.
because she says once she finds out, Vi knows she can't keep this a secret, or like Rhiannon's gonna find out eventually. Yet for some reason she's still holding back in this moment.
I know. Ugh. Yep.
Yeah. And I think this is maybe in response to her saying, like, she's never going to forgive me when she finds out. And Taryn says, humans have the memory of gnats. Dragons hold grudges. And in this chapter, thinking about him and Solace, I'm just thinking, like, he's clearly holding a grudge against Solace. So was this from sometime in the last few decades because of Varish specifically? Like, since Solace has been bonded to Varish? Or was this against Solace himself? Like, is this a personal grudge between Taryn and Solace? Because we know that he took his eye, but we don't know anything else about what happened. And he still obviously is pissed at him, but, like, he clearly doesn't like Varish either, but Taryn's like over 100 years old. So I just feel like there's so much we don't know about that.
Yeah.
This made me wonder if there was a little thing with Sigale.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. Sigale would never.
No.
Not that she would, but like
Love triangle.
that like Solace was trying to like get after her. You know what I mean? So Taryn had
Like,
to throw
get
it
after
down.
her? Or like,
Well, yeah, of
mean-
course, both.
Segale's a high commodity, Con. Come on.
And that's
Have
and
you
that's,
seen
maybe
her?
that's part of why he had to take an eye. Because they clearly
maybe.
Because he's
fought
looking at
in
his
some way.
lady.
So I don't know, man.
If you're right, I offends you.
Exactly. I am 1,000% supportive of Jon finding any sort of romantic situation, even if it's amongst the dragons.
I'm just inserting it in there wherever I can. I chose my words poorly.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay. I was about to be like, I'm supporting Jon, and then you said that. No, I'm going to back out.
Never mind.
And because of that, for that reason, I'm out.
My next comment here was when Varys tries to basically tell Violet what to do, and Taryn's like, no, basically, she's not, this isn't going to happen. And Violet, in her mind, she goes, oh shit, this could go very bad quickly. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope it does, bro. I'm literally on the edge of my seat. I was like, no pun intended, first of all. And I was like reading on my bed, and I like had to like shift over to like sit up on my knees and
So
like
good
have
at.
to get the book right up in there. I was like, yes, what's about to happen?
Yeah, when Varys walks up and has the first conversation with her, he goes,
Oh, yeah.
leans to the side to look past Taryn's foreign leg. No little feather tail with you today. I'm like, you dramatic bastard. Like, this is a freaking huge dragon, and you're looking for a smaller but still huge dragon, and you're just like, don't see it anywhere. I'm like, oh my God, you are the literal worst.
Yep.
Such an idiot. So I had like a series of notes for this next section. Also have to just give a little shout out to the narrator, Rebecca Soler, because the way she narrates the scene is so intense.
Nice.
It's like she really commits to Taryn's voice, and like there are exclamation points in the text, and she really goes for it. It's like my jaw was just like on the floor listening to this. But Taryn's threatening Varys, and he says like, only a rider can be the vice commandant of Basgiath. Without a dragon, you are no rider. And then I'm like, oh shit, let's go, Taryn. And then he tells Varys to freaking apologize, and he goes, not good enough. My jaw's on the floor. Violet's like, no, it's really okay. He doesn't need to apologize. It's fine. Like, let's just move on. And he says, it is necessary to me, Silver One. I speak for Indarna while she is in the dreamless sleep. And then Varys does apologize, and Taryn says, on your knees. I was just living for this whole moment. I like couldn't stop highlighting all of it, and the way she reads it is just so good.
It is super good. And then to end it all, it says Taryn dislodges his jaw with a wet sucking sound as his fangs slip free from Solis's neck, and he retreats with an arrogant footfalls, not even bothering to lower his head or protect his throat. Super badass. He's amazing.
I did really appreciate how like Varys wasn't coolly like, fine, I'll apologize. He was legitimately like, please stop.
Scared.
Like, I'm so afraid right now. It was good to see that side of him where it wasn't just all smiles and douchebaggery.
Yes.
Well, and then Rhee, like in all of this, I think Rhee and Riddick and maybe even Sawyer, like they all come up and like are there for Violet. I think Rhee asks like, you know, are you okay? Is there anything I can do? And she says, no, she's fine. And it says she glances over at me, and even though there are only a few feet between us, the distance feels insurmountable. And I just hate this for them so much, because Rhee is literally the best friend ever, and Violet needs a best friend ever, and she's shutting her out, and it just makes me sad.
Yeah, I love her so much. Okay, so this is later on, like next day, Rhiannon is escorting Violet to the flight field so that she can go to Samara. They're like walking up, and they're about to like bypass the gauntlet to get up to the flight field. And in Violet's POV, it just says, this is going to hurt like hell. I subluxated my knee yesterday during a challenge, but at least I won. And I had to highlight this part because I feel like it's just kind of crazy that during book one, something like this, like subluxating her knee during a challenge, would have been a major event in the book. And now her problems are so much bigger, and she's grown so much that like this is just a passing thought that like, ugh, this is going to suck. I subluxated my knee yesterday, but like at least I won. The character development here was just awesome. I mean, it sucks that this happened, but go Violet.
I had it highlighted. It was just the word subluxated that bothers me, because it's always that with her. A subluxation is just like a partial dislocation, which, yeah, sure, a little bit bad. Not as bad as a full dislocation or like any other injury you could possibly have. And it just bothers me that it's always the same thing.
But isn't like, they don't straight up say she has whatever disease, but isn't it specifically that her joints are weak? So
yeah, but that can lead to a lot of different kinds of injuries. So partial dislocate, it's just weird that it's always partial, first of all. And it's always weird that it's just not any other thing that can go wrong with the joints to me.
Doesn't she dislocate her shoulder in the
first one, yeah, like that's the first thing that happens. But since then,
and
sorry, she's not getting broken enough for you, Kyle.
It's not even that.
Sorry, it's only halfway.
It seems like it's one of those words that I guess maybe Rebecca just really likes, so it gets used a lot.
I almost made that comment.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
She's also like, it's not like she's always going to the healers. So maybe she's just saying that word and she's just using her own regular terms that she's used to. But another doctor would be like, technically, it's a whatever Kyle would be proud of kind of a tear.
I guess it just seems weird to me that someone who grew up around books didn't ever use a thesaurus, I guess.
Oh my gosh. All right, Kyle.
Well, I don't know if we've ever talked about this in person or on the podcast, but Rebecca Yarros has EDS, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and then has also talked about how like she wanted to represent that chronic illness with Violet's character. So Violet, I mean, has EDS, but like it's not, it's not something that is diagnosed in this
and I totally
world
get
or
that.
whatever.
It's just the wording is funny to me more than anything.
I don't know if that's like what Rebecca calls it personally, if this happens to her all the time. Like maybe that's just part of the representation of the chronic illness, that this is something that literally happens over and over and over. And like, it's just not part of life that we see because we don't have it.
Have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
I could see that.
I know what I'm researching tonight, I guess.
Well, come back next time and let us know.
EDS trivia next week.
Oh my gosh. Rhiannon is taking Violet up to Tarn and they pass the gauntlet, and Rhiannon starts talking about how awful it is and how it's a waste to kill people, and is just kind of having like, where I feel like Rhiannon came into Basgiath, she was like #1 champion of riders and like this is what she wanted to do and like was pro all things Basgiath, and now in her second year is like they're just killing us for no reason and just kind of having a different attitude about everything. So I think there's some character development obviously going off page that we're seeing with Rhiannon. Like every time she's having conversations, there's a lot going on with her too. But in this moment, Violet responds with like, yes, it's awful that in this moment Aurelie fell because she died right in front of her. But I think it made me a better writer having been there and having watched her fall to her death and known that if I didn't get my ass moving, I was going to be next. And then Rhea says, that's horrible. And she says, but you haven't seen what's out there and what makes me run every morning. And so just like a really interesting conversation between them. I feel like Rhea is finally kind of seeing where Vi is coming from and like how horrible things really are. But like Violet ends up kind of yelling at her to where at the end, Rhiannon says, I'd rather you scream at me than pretend that everything's all right with silence. Violet ends up saying like, well, nothing's all right. So like Violet's super struggling like mentally and all this stuff. And I feel like she really does a good job, even in the book, putting up a good front for even just us reading it and then all her friends. But like, she's really, really going through it. But I thought an interesting in the moment here too was her like kind of debating if she was going to say something and like kind of give her the truth. She says, friends tell the truth. Telling her would put her in danger, but not telling her leaves her unprepared, just like we were out there. And it's just like this whole inner monologue that Violet is having. It's just what I picture and what I imagine Xaden was like in book 1. Like all of book 1 was like, I should tell her the truth because, she'll be unprepared. But if I tell her, it'll be so dangerous and all the things. And so I'm hoping that when Violet kind of realizes she's doing exactly what Xaden is doing to her, but she's doing it to her friends. And so maybe like her and Xaden will have some reconciliation. She'll start treating Rhiannon better because she's like, this is not how I would want to be treated in this moment. It just all has to like reach the boiling point at some point. And she's finally like getting some sort of anger type of emotion out of it instead of just kind of coasting. So I don't know. It's boiling up. What % of the book are we here?
30.
Okay,
32.
So it's going to explode at some point soon, I'm sure. Well, chapter 20, this is me maybe overthinking things, but we get to where Violet is walking into Samara, and she says that I can feel his, being Taryn's, anticipation about going to see Sigale. So I can feel his anticipation singing through my bloodstreams, but I don't block it out. At least one of us can be happy. The things that will happen later later, though, that I'll block out like my life depends on it. First of all, very funny. Obviously, Xaden and Violet love each other. But I've kind of wondered if some of their interactions are heightened emotionally because of Taryn and Sigale kind of like being friendly with each other in the background, because they only see each other all these weekends, and then they're always arguing, or they're having these like mad explosive makeout sessions, and all of a sudden they're angry again. And obviously they are working through something, but I wonder if because of that bond with the dragons, it's making everything that they're going through heightened to a more dramatic effect than a normal if they just sat down and had a civil conversation about things. But you know, but they do have this kiss in front of literally everyone in
they do.
Entire place, including Mira, which she doesn't even know Mira is there, which is crazy. That she says in their mind, good enough for the show, and he says, fuck the show. And I was like, yes. You tell her. That kiss though, oof.
So good.
And of course, whenever they're together, they're always working on the shields and all that. And she always comments that she can never like keep him out fully. And he responds with, told you, I'm harder than most. And I said, yeah, you are.
And then whenever Violet and Mira are off tossing daggers with each other, something that's sort of, I guess, playing over and over again in Violet's mind is her just thinking, Brennan is alive. Brennan is alive. Brennan is alive. I was like, yeah. That'd be really tough to not say around a family member who like also cared for him. And like, I don't from first person perspective understand, but I get how that would be like something that's like just something you'd really want to tell them but can't. So
and Mira's not helping. She keeps saying stuff like, your only sibling. Like, I don't want to lose another sibling.
Yeah.
For real. But yeah, at least Mira though gives her a little bit about this RSC class compared to anybody else, because Mira says like they're gonna beat you black and blue just to see if you can take it. I just thought it was funny how she responds. She says, I can handle pain. I live in pain. I practically built a house there and set up a whole economy. I can take whatever they dish out. That just made me laugh. It's unfortunate that she has to go through
economy.
that, but at least she's making jokes.
So part of this conversation, Mira notices that Violet is using Tirish daggers and like asks her about it. Since when do you use Tirish daggers? And then Mira says, I haven't seen runes like that in ... a while. And they just kind of move on with the conversation. But I was like, since when, Mira? What do you mean? Like, you know, these are Tirish daggers. You know, these are runes. And you've seen them before. When did you see them before? Because they don't have these up as Gaiath, other than like the one that her mom had on.
Yes.
Yeah, other than the one that General Sorengale had on her desk. But like,
even when other people have seen them, they haven't said those are runes,
right?
Or like she's saying it by name. Interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna leave that there. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe she has to know it for her signet.
Maybe for like weaving wards.
That's a good point.
Weaving runes into wards. Anyway, I, throughout this conversation, also appreciate that the seed of doubt was planted in Mira's mind with the wyvern. Yep. And then even though she was like, maybe, I don't even fully buy into the fact that she was so flippant with it. Maybe that was her hiding, you're crazy, kid. But hopefully she comes around and not against Vi and her squad.
Yeah.
Like to see her join the side, not, fight against them, obviously.
Yeah.
I think this is in that conversation, too, when Mira says something in passing and Violet says, that information goes straight to the box. And I wasn't putting two and two together when I read this, and I was like, what box are you talking about?
The box.
The box.
The box.
But this comes back later. And then when Xaden finally gets back to his room, and I forget what question she asked him. I probably should need that.
If you're
though.
meeting with a drift.
Yeah, and he was like, next week.
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Yes. He
weeks.
says, in a few weeks. She says, holy shit, it worked. And says out loud, oh, you answered. And I was like, was this a secret, though? The whole thing has been, answering questions. Because I was like, I'm not sure this was such a huge deal, especially when he still gave, a very vague answer. Oh, yeah, just in a couple weeks. And she's like, oh, he answered. Oh, my gosh.
She's looking for any reason to jump him.
Kiss me now.
She is.
I'm like, what? That's the vaguest answer you could give. In a few weeks.
Yeah, eventually.
Anyway. And then she also asks him, what's with the weaving book you left me after graduation? And he says, just thought you might like to keep your hands busy. He shrugs with one shoulder, but the devious glint in his eyes says it's something more than that. I'm trying to figure out his real intention for this, but also, we were kind of talking about runes earlier in the podcast, and I was thinking, if the runes don't have to be just an alloy, or like, for example, part of a dagger, can they like be sewn into clothing for protection or something like that? Or like a hair braid? Like, what does it all mean?
Hair braid.
Like,
Hair braid. Ooh,
like, I don't know what
wow.
she's doing, because she's got like cloth or something, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? So it's like,
Even says that later on in like a class, she's making a rune in her lap with that kit or something.
Yeah.
yeah.
With like strips of cloth. Yeah.
Yep.
Because I had this thought here, and then when that happens later, I was like, wait, so she's like literally weaving a rune with fabric. I thought she was just doing like making a knot, but then she finds out are there like different kind of runes? We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he like kind of sets it up that it is like making knots, and I can do every
Yeah,
knot in
yeah.
that book or whatever.
I was like,
and then
Yeah.
later
Cool.
she does just casually go like, and like the runes here in my lap, and that's all you get. And you're like,
I'm like,
what?
wait.
Wait.
Back up a little bit.
Anyway, we'll get there. We'll maybe.
Yeah,
talk
where's
about it.
Markham now to go? What do we have here?
Yeah, for real.
Freaking idiot. And then she's just thinking about what all she knows and like them talking about stuff. She says, and I know enough about him to be a real liability with the interrogation portion of RSC coming up. And I was like, oh, damn, I never considered until now that they might use that as like an excuse to get answers from her about Xaden, but also Andarna for that matter, since they're like wanting to know like everything about her. But also on this note, now I'm curious, now that they know that like the drink cuts off their dragons, I'm wondering if the professors will try and use like a different method next time, if they're planning on, kidnapping them in the same way where they need to hide where they're taking them or whatever. So I'm curious if they'll employ some different methods with that.
Of what? Of the like poison?
Of the concoction.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like if Grady tries to be like, take a drink out of my water skin, they're probably not going to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then she also asks what the alloy is made of. She says, I ask Hetty with knowledge that I can keep Dane out. And he says, an amalgamation of palladium, a few other ores, and dragon egg shells. And I was like, I need to know the other ores, Xaden. Stop giving me some of the information that she's asking for, you freaking turkey. Come on, man.
Yeah. I had this highlighted as well. I just put open book my butt, Xaden.
Exactly.
Like, just going off all these vague answers that he's giving.
Like as a reader, is palladium supposed to be like important to me?
Yeah, I don't-
Like,
I
do
don't
I
know.
when
I
I
just-
read that one word,
Yeah.
was it?
Right.
Palladium. Hardly know him.
Well, and he also mentions here that the dragon eggs are made of their metal.
Yeah,
They're
that is
metal
weird.
and they still
Yeah,
hold
which is
magic
pretty
for like a
cool.
long time after they
Yeah.
hatched.
But they don't really talk about it. He just kind of drops that in there, and I had to go back and reread it again.
Forgot about that too. Well, the chapter ends with them snuggling. Xaden says, "You love me," and she was just like, "Yeah, quit reminding me, like whatever." And he goes, "Maybe you're not the one I'm reminding." And I was like,
Oh.
Violet, take him back, please."
Okay, so that takes us into our last chapter of this section, chapter 21. And the pre-chat blurb in this one. Pre-chat. Starts off by saying the migration of the first year is one of the crowning achievements of Navarre's unification. And it's like, what a celebration of human spirit, blah, blah, blah. Like, lifting it up. And my note was like, wasn't this migration actually like super shitty for so many of the people? I couldn't remember
many.
where that was, but that did not sit well with me.
Well, yeah, they even talk about it a little bit as they go through the history or whatever. But
Yeah, it's during history class that Violet's
Yeah.
like thinking through like how sucky it was.
Yeah.
Well, and people volunteer how sucky it was, too.
yeah, that's true. I highlighted the last part of this one where it says a united society whose only goal is mutual security, and I was like, pfft, like yeah, right. This is coming from Markham. Like, okay.
Yeah.
And then she's talking about she's got her like arm in a sling or something from her shoulder, and they're talking about how there's no maneuvers that day, there's no RSC, she's got no physics classes, and I was like, sounds like the perfect day to get kidnapped. I was like fully expecting something like this to happen in this chapter. She was like, man, this is such a great day. I was like, whoa, okay then, here it comes.
Just jinx yourself.
Just jinxed it, dang it. But it didn't happen. And then they're talking about the attack on one of the outposts. I think it was like the Eastern Front. Yeah. And they mentioned that Mason was dead. Yeah. And she says there's no logical way an attack would be used to cover up a single death, right? And at first I was like, why would they lie about this though? Is he a marked one? And then like a couple lines down, it was like, oh, he was at Ressen, another person who was there who's gone now. So I was like, okay, yeah, they're still taking him out one by one, man.
Yeah.
Until it's just going to be her and Xaden, I feel like.
No, I hope not. That's like
Bodhi
and Garrick and Imogen and all my besties.
Killing off everybody, you guys.
Yeah.
That's what they're going for, so it's pretty logical that one might happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now it says out of the 10 that were still there are only 6 of them that are still alive. But they don't explain like what is happening, that all the leadership felt the need to go.
Oh yeah, true. Because they were all like running or whatever
and so
when
it
Sawyer
seems
said they were
super
running.
important, and we never get that information. Yeah. And I also thought it was really weird that like of all the information Devera knew, she just decides to tell them that marked one, that Mason is dead. Is she trying to like hint and give you information and be helpful, or is this just like conveniently the only information that maybe the leadership passed on as like a threat type of a thing? Like it just was sketchy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Also sketchy and interesting. They're talking about unification and how a lot of the culture was lost of these different provinces when they unified. Someone said technically they, meaning like the other provinces, gave up their languages, I think is what they're talking about here. Gave them up willingly for the good of the unification, but other than a few words here and there being assimilated, they're dead languages. And then Devera says, correct, there is always a cost. Just thought this whole conversation was really interesting context, considering the original epigraph at the beginning of the book that this was translated into the modern language, because now we know that this has recently happened, that there were languages that are just suddenly considered dead languages because they willingly offered them up for the sake of the unification. Could be our present day Jacinia, like not too long down the road. I keep going back and forth between like, is this actually her, or is this a descendant later, or I don't know.
Well, for me, it was, why did the dad feel so important for Violet to have learned some of these languages? Like, because Jacinia, the first time they're talking is because she wants her to translate some book that's in some old language or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it's like, why was Dad so concerned that Violet learned these old languages? Other than, maybe for lost information, how she talks later about how like it would have taken hundreds of years for all the Tirish texts to be translated. So like maybe it's one of those, like she'll find some old book or something, or
that she would need to translate. It's also, speaking of languages she knows, I would be curious to whether she learned how to sign specifically for like Jacinia, or if that was just another language that she was taught, because every time someone else signs, she's surprised, which means it's not a common thing. Like when Liam did it, when Xaden did it, she's like, oh my gosh, you know how to sign? So at first I thought, oh, maybe just it's a common thing everyone knows in this world, like we had talked about before, but clearly it's not. So I get as a scribe how knowing written languages would be useful to translate, but I wonder how many other languages she knows, because signing is obviously not a written language that you would need to translate. So
but I do think it's interesting that the only other people signing are marked ones.
Yes, that we've seen.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then like she's surprised Xaden can do it, but he's like, I mean, you know how to speak Tirish, and only one of those things is not common. So like obviously like signing is a little more common, but like I don't know. At least among the marked ones. I don't know.
And so we're back to the rune conversation, but this is where I noted when they like mentioned runes and Violet's thinking like the ones on my daggers, the ones on the columns of the temple in Orisha, the ones I'm currently weaving in my lap. And that's when I was like, hold on, is she just referring to parts of the Tirish culture, or is she literally weaving runes? And now that we've talked a little bit about it, it's like she's definitely literally weaving the runes, which are the knots. So that's where that thought was. It was like, Oh my gosh. Because when her and Xaden were talking about how the runes can be imbued with power, although I think that was because of the alloy as well,
Yeah.
I think, with the daggers. But I'm thinking, well, if that can happen, what can runes designed with other materials do, basically? So that just really made my ears perk up about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While we're on the rune conversation, like way long time ago, whenever they were in his room, I think the very first time she got there was like a rock or something on his desk that had a rune on it. And it just mentioned like, put my stuff down next to this table where there's a rock with a rune on it, blah, 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 moving on. And I highlighted that, but I didn't mention it earlier because like we had super talked about runes or whatever. And I don't know what's spoilers and what's not. But clearly like Xaden just has them chilling. So like...
Yeah. And he's bragging about being able to do all of it.
Yeah, that's true. That he knew all the ones in the books. So
Yeah, and I don't think we know, for speaking of like the other daggers too, like where Palladium comes from.
Right.
Unless it's like from, I don't know. I'd be even more interested to know like the deal to get dragon eggs. Like when dragons hatch, are they just like, oh, gather up the shells.
Good
We got to
point.
give them out to like,
Yep.
you know, these people who are wanting them, or like if any other part of the dragon could also be used that way, like her dragon scale armor, could that be used to forge anything? Or
good
Yeah.
point.
yeah, how do they collect the little eggshells?
Yep. Or big eggshells, I guess.
It's true.
It's true. How big are they?
It is interesting that, like, because those are from Mira's dragon, obviously, in Mira's lifetime. So they obviously do it often enough to where she was able to make something like that.
Yeah.
But then, like, nobody else has, like, any idea that that can be done or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they're not using dragon shells to put on the outside of an outpost as additional armor.
Right.
Or
It's
like,
Okay, well, if
anything.
they're this strong, then, like, why
Right.
doesn't everybody have a freaking dragon?
Yeah, because she said she ran it up to the leadership and they're like, yeah, we'll see. And I'm like, what do you mean we'll see? Like,
Yeah.
it said it took her like a few
Saved her
molting
life,
seasons,
like-
but I mean, if every rider did that and like you just get the guy who shrinks scales down, full-time armor maker, you're set.
For real, dude, yeah. I don't know.
Or
Anyway.
make them bigger or smaller depending on what you would want. Like I was saying, like to block
Yeah,
a whole
he'll
building.
size you up.
Or I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about like the buildings or a location or just like make things, you know,
Yeah.
dragon proof.
Yeah.
Yep, word. That's what I'm saying.
Weird. Yeah. I need a lot
Yeah.
of information.
No answers, but a lot of questions.
That's how like every book is. You come out of it with more questions than you thought you would.
I mean, I'm going to guess that the Palladium has something to do with like the word. The ward stones, not the word stone. I was like,
yeah.
that's the only other thing. He already said that they use that to make the daggers able to kill the venom. I'm assuming that the ward stones are not also dragon eggs or various other ores.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
assuming
a-
the other ores are just like tin or bronze or something easily
Yeah.
smithable. But
Smithable. Nice.
yeah.
Smithable.
Or maybe, yeah, just whatever the actual dagger is normally made out of, like an iron or something.
Yeah.
Smithable.
Yeah.
Smithable. Smithable.
They smith them in Athman.
Smithable.
That's what they give to kids who want to be a blacksmith. It's like a Lunchable. It's just like a smithable. It comes with a little...
My word.
A little miniature anvil and
Yeah.
start your kid early.
Oh my gosh. I had a quick note here. I don't think this ever really registered with me before on previous reads, but when they're talking about the unification process, it says 1 year. That's all Navarre gave before we closed our borders. And if you couldn't afford to move your family or couldn't risk the treacherous journey, nothing about war or the aftermath is kind. This was so crazy to just stop and think about for a second, because like, if this happened in real life, like if the US did this and closed their borders right now, like we would be screwed. There's no way within a year that we would be able to like gather the funds to relocate and like move our family with our 2 toddlers to a completely different country. Or like, I don't know why this never hit me before, but I just stopped and was actually thinking about it. And that is wild to me.
I would try my darndest.
I'd give it my all.
We have 2 car seats, a somewhat okay bank account, and the gas to get to Canada.
Bank account are you looking at?
I would rather be homeless in Canada than U.S. with closed borders.
Yup. Same.
Well, and isn't it here too that they were like some of the people you might end up fighting, like a Griffin Rider, could be a distant relative or something because it all got cut off, and then you're just separated from family, and who knows what else. Like, it's just kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah. But Violet ends up like kind of telling off this other student who's, I don't know, unification, I guess. But she was like, a portion of the original scribes spoke Tyrish, meaning that it would have taken hundreds of years to translate every text. And even then, there is no historical tomes older than 400 years in our archives that I know of. They're all 6th, 7th, or even 8th editions. Logic dictates that she's right, that things are lost in translation. I'm just here for this history lesson. Like, this whole class was just so informative of so many things. But I also appreciate that she's actually speaking out on this, and that Devira is just like, yeah, she's right, listen to her. So it gives me more like, I think Devira's on the good side maybe, because she's not being all like shutting her down or trying to turn the conversation or turning her in, but is instead like, yes, everyone, she is right, I would listen to her. So I don't know, that whole thing was intense. But then we go back into sparring class. This is our 3rd time here, I think, in just this chapter section. But she does say that the first years will start having the gauntlet to worry about starting next week, and then presentation, and then threshing. So this will be their last time for sparring for a while. And the second years will start disappearing by the squad for a few days at a time so that they can teach us how to take torture. Fun times. But I was wondering this at the beginning of this reread, like, how do the first years not notice that all the second years are like randomly missing at different times, or that they're like randomly got bruises all the time? Like, if they're not, I guess, immediately mended, that kind of a thing. But I guess it makes sense that they would turn their focus onto the gauntlet and all of that. But it does make me kind of want to go back with specifically this thought to the beginning of Fourth Wing and reread during this. Was there any mentions of Dane mysteriously not being there when she thought he should have been, or Imogen being gone, or any of the other second years that she normally would have seen or been around, and then just not being there for some reason, or having a bruise that she couldn't explain, and then wondering if that was them going through RSC.
Well, if you think about it too, like, if not for Violet's personal connections to people in years above her, she doesn't know any of the years above her. Like, Xaden and his friends and Dane, I feel like the first years would just be so focused on surviving themselves that they're not going to be like, oh man, aside from, their squad leader and their wing leader, they probably don't care to really grow connections to someone a year above them unless they reach out to them.
Yeah.
Weird.
Plus, most second years might just be, on the weekends. They don't even have weekends. They're gone. So the first years are stuck at the school.
My next note here, this is when Dane is trying to talk to Violet. She's like scooching closer to Riddick, then she moves on the other side of Riddick, and he's still following her around trying to talk to her. And then she goes around the corner of the mat, like past Rhiannon. It says, I lift my middle finger and around the corner of the mat, taking the spot next to Rhiannon. And I just put, ha, take that, Dane. Yeah. Stick it to him.
Well, and then Rhee's immediate response is like, look, I'll hate him on principle if that's what we're doing here. I have no problem with that. But, and then she's like, what's going on, kind of a thing. But just that immediately, like, if you're not going to tell me, that's fine. I'll still hate him because, like, you hate him. Like, what a best friend. Like, she's literally amazing, and I love her so much. And then Dane actually challenges her to a battle, or like to a sparring whatever, and I'm just like, oh, she needed to just punch him in the face so much. And honestly, I needed her to punch him in the face so much. I feel so much better after that happening. It was so cathartic for everyone. But he literally is on top of her in this like battle, and he says, I just wanted to talk to you, he whispers, his face inches from mine. And I was like, why was this so hot and steamy when it was Xaden, and it's so cringy and disgusting when it's Dane? Like, I'm literally like, ugh, inches from her face. Ugh.
I just want to talk to you.
I know. But like when Xaden was doing this first year, I was like, ooh, inches from her face. Like,
lick me.
Just complete. Oh, okay. Wow. Jon.
Yeah, catch him by surprise.
Oh my gosh. This part made me laugh out loud. We've already made our Athpin joke a lot today, but whenever she says, you'll bleed out on this mat if you even think of taking a single one of my memories. And he goes, that's what Ryerson meant when he said, Athpin, isn't it? That's how I went. Athpin. It just makes me laugh every freaking time. But it was surprising. He had no idea.
Yeah.
And then he's like got her trapped. He's got like his forearm or whatever, like kind of across her neck. It says 2 lines appear between his brows. I told my father what I saw when I touched you. And I went, this bitch. I couldn't. I was like, that's, oh. This one got me amped up real quick on that one.
Yeah. I mean, in his defense, if I'm actually going to defend Dane, he did say that it was because second years don't get leave for that kind of flight. So I told my father. So really, he was telling on Bodhi. He wasn't necessarily telling on Xaden. He did steal the memory, but
Still a little
maybe.
tattletale.
Yeah.
Yep.
Little codex licking.
Memory stealing.
Why do you guys have with licking right now?
And then he's like kind of coming clean about some stuff, but I feel like he's also partially digging himself a deeper hole a little bit. But he also says, I had no clue griffins were waiting to ambush you. And this made my ears prick up too, because I said, oh, he doesn't know what actually happened because he also bought like their story. So I feel like that's pretty important because initially when we found out that he was probably reading her memories, he told his dad and that he knew they were getting sent there to pretty much die, but that doesn't seem the case. So
Yeah.
that's good for him, at least at this part. And then when he tells her that it was her mom that gave Xaden the lashes or whatever, the scars. And she says, he didn't mean that. There's no way my mother sliced into Xaden 107 times. And I'm like, bro, how did you not consider this could have been your mom? Like, I knew, for crying out loud. Like, this was an easy, like, oh, yeah, totally, once we found out about it. And then, yes, back to when she mentions that she has an overfull box. And I was like, oh, that box, I got it. After she learned some new information, she put that information in her box. It's her information box. It's
Yeah.
your little knowledge box.
She's tucking it back there.
She's tucking it back in her, you know.
I really think
Yeah.
it's her emotional, I can't handle this right now box.
Yes.
Maybe it's this one and the
It's-
same, you know what I mean?
That's
I'll deal with
that's
this
fair.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Compartmentalization. There's tons of boxes you can use.
Yeah. But they're all in the same cabinet.
Yeah.
That is honestly typical for, yeah. It's not
For
like,
what, Kyle?
It is. I'm being completely serious. Psychologically speaking, it is typical for girls to have 1 or 2 boxes, and for guys to have a ton of boxes.
Really?
It's
I
yeah.
feel like it would be the opposite.
Boys are waffles and girls are spaghetti. And boys go from one box to the next, and they can only handle the one box they're in, as where girls are spaghetti and it's all on top of each other, and they just deal with it all at the same time. And they can jump from one thing to the next really easily, like our conversations can. But boys have to do one box at a time.
It's not really a have to do thing. It's just like that's the most common. That's also why a lot of people in relationships will complain when they ask their guy, like, what are you thinking about? And he'll say nothing.
Yeah.
Because that's actually possible for a guy to not think while he's just like, that's it. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm in my nothing box right now.
New vocabulary for couples everywhere.
I love my nothing box.
And some guys have more nothing boxes than others. Some boxes are just not full.
Multiple nothing boxes.
Yeah. Some girls, spaghetti, no sauce, just noodles, just wet noodles hanging around.
I don't like this now.
Oh, wet noodles.
I really think there's a book called that girls are spaghetti and boys are waffles or something like that. Like that's a legitimate thing.
Yeah.
I didn't just
And
make that
it's
up.
it's like one of those things where it's like every personality test ever. That's typical. Like most people will start that way, but you can totally train yourself to do either.
It's a book.
It's a book.
Nice.
$9 on Amazon.
Hey-o.
Oh wait, is this an ad?
Put that in the storefront. All right.
Yep. Let's move on.
Well, that last rabbit trail's over. Let's go.
I can see
Okay.
the bottom of the notes.
Yes, the end is nigh. So Violet uses taking Arik to the infirmary as like a sort of scapegoat for this conversation. Like, let me just get out of here. So she's walking Arik to the infirmary, and we haven't really seen much of Arik, but this little comment just got me, and it just made me love him immediately. Arik's like, "What part of this isn't fun?" He asks, walking ahead and opening the next door with his unbroken hand. Between the two of us, we have a full set of functioning arms.
That's pretty good.
Good one.
I love that. And then his jaw flexes. So Cheers. Last one of the section.
Cheers.
First one for Arik.
Yeah.
As they continue to talk, it says he shoots a look at me. The ones with the little metal discs he mentions. Pew. And my question here was, is this different from the runes? It's not different from the runes. It's the same as the runes.
I think it's the alloy that he's talking about. Like they have the venom daggers. The little metal discs are the alloy infused daggers.
There's a little disc in the hilt.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I feel like I'm having trouble picturing that because
I'm sure there's a picture we can find.
Okay. Because like the runes are they like kind of like etched into like the hilt of the dagger?
I kind of picture the runes like I picture the design on the book cover.
They're etched into like the...
You know, I don't know if I have mine here.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I picture runes like Doctor Strange, and it's like circle, square, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
whatever.
kind of like the book cover. That's the same vibe.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like placement, I guess. Not what they look like necessarily.
I pictured it on the dagger itself, the blade.
In the conversation that Xaden has with Violet about them in his room, he talks about how like the alloy, it can be imbued again. Like it runs out of energy once it's used and has to be like imbued again. So that's my take on this little metal disc, is what is like inserted in when it's imbued to the already made dagger. And then they can put like a new one, almost like a battery.
Yeah.
So there might be like slots in the hilt or something for the runes.
Possibly.
For the little metal alloy part. I don't know where the runes are, but...
Okay. All right. That's better.
Yeah.
Like a quarter in a turn machine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing too.
Yeah.
You just kind of like, yeah. All right, cool.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Pictures would help.
Okay.
But that's
what we
also
can
helpful.
Oh. I just tried to do a quick search for some fan art of like a Tirish dagger, and I can't really find anything.
Boo.
But
All right. That's fine.
if you know of any artists who
We'll
have
reach out to Rebecca.
drawn one, get Rebecca on the line.
Yeah.
So the very last line of this chapter section is Violet saying, "You know, don't you?" And Arik lifts a brow, the mage light catching on those royally green eyes. "Why else would I be here?"
Yeah, I wrote, "Damn it to hell with the stopping point." I was so mad.
Aw.
Who changed my note to ribbit?
I did not thought you did.
That wasn't me. It must have been Kyle.
It was me.
Guilty laughter. Oh my gosh. That's it though for this chapter section. I say that's it. This is like
Crazy.
there's a lot.
Super crazy.
A lot happened. So let's get into a little bit of reflection. What are your overall thoughts, boys? How we feeling?
I'm low-key loathing Violet and Xaden arguing all the time and not getting to see each other. I'm also bummed that she's not really like sharing anything with anybody else, especially with Ree. It's giving me Harry Potter vibes with Dumbledore not telling Harry anything and like shutting him out and thinking it'll get easier on him in the long run. And it didn't, obviously, and it won't here either.
Spoilers.
Yeah, well, I feel like her keeping all this to herself is just going to bite her in the butt later. I mean, it almost already has multiple times. It's like, it seems like it's catching up to her like very quickly, like multiple angles with like all these different people. Now that Mira's back and she'll have a little more access to Mira being at Samara, figuring stuff out, Jasenia too. I mean, it's coming from everywhere. Yeah, and I'm thinking all of them might draw a different part of the overall conclusion. They're in like different parts of all that, of Violet's knowledge. So like Ree has like a different angle on stuff, so she might figure out some stuff. Mira as well. She might get some like first-hand account stuff with being posted at Samara, so that'll be super interesting. Otherwise, absolutely pumped about Taryn's dominance on display. I mean, yes please, more of that, please.
Hell yeah.
Yep.
I just wrote my thoughts in ascending order of impact are, how do you not check if your maps match? Like, I can't picture a scenario where I wouldn't even just accidentally see the other map and go, uh-oh. Like, are they hiding the maps? I don't get it. And I don't know why I didn't mention it earlier, but there it is. The hair thing bothers me, but I'm willing to let it go for 2 episodes maximum. Varish is the worst.
The worst. Literally, she's the worst.
And then, yeah, Taryn is the absolute best. What a champ. The scene of chomping of Solas's throat.
Chomp, chomp.
Pure cinema.
Chomp, chomp.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
Absolutely.
I love that scene.
So good.
All right, so thoughts on any new characters or current favorites and least favorites of all the characters? Do you have any changes?
Of course, infantry sucks. Like, they don't do anything. I don't know why they're here.
Dang.
Loving
Okay.
Rhee a bit more as she stands up for herself and is still on Violet's team. I'm surprised that we haven't seen much more of Sloane, really, other than
Same.
the little bit that we've seen on the mat, because there was such a build-up, and especially at the beginning of the book.
First years.
I know, right? Yeah, they just don't
Typical.
care. We'll see if she makes it. And based on the end of the section, I'm assuming we're going to be seeing a lot more of Auric, which excites me because I was pretty hyped about him coming into play and then him saving that random chick when Solas torched everybody. And I'm thinking maybe he will kind of fill Liam's shoes in a way, possibly. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yep, favorite still Taryn. I don't know who my least favorite is. Probably Varys, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
He
true.
can
Fair
stay there
enough.
for now.
Valid.
Yeah. Oh, he's staying down there, all right.
Lick him.
Ribbit. Okay, thoughts and theories at this point in the book. Where you at?
I think Indarna will wake up at the most opportune time to save Violet or something. At the same time, I'm assuming we'll learn what power Violet gets from her newly matured form. I'm assuming she'll get, I guess, a second signet. I mean, if they're both bonded, she's going to get more power from her. Oh, yes, and I was going to say, the timing-wise, it may just be whenever she gets kidnapped for the torture part of RSC. I think whenever she does get kidnapped and tortured, it's going to be bad. I would love it if, like, on one of Varish's bag checks, when she goes off to Samara, that they, like, find something on Taryn, and then he has no choice but to basically kill him. That would be... I mean, that could prove
Please
problematic.
clarify. You mean kill Varish?
Yes.
Okay. The way it was worded almost sounded like they find something on Taryn and they have to kill him.
No, Taryn will kill. And Taryn, they find something on Taryn, and then Taryn has no choice
Yes,
but
okay.
to kill everybody. Yes.
Just clarify.
Obviously, they're not going to kill Taryn. That's
Obviously
a
not.
ridiculous idea.
Don't jinx us like that, Con.
That would prove pretty problematic because it's not like there'd be a bunch of witnesses and then there'd
Right.
just be like dead bodies. Although he could just torch them. Wow.
Eat the body.
Wow. So he should have just done it when there were all the witnesses around and all the
Yeah,
other
he
dragons
really,
were there.
He really should have.
And there's
though.
some death roll tomorrow, and everyone's like, "Yeah,
Oh, too
Yeah.
bad,
it's the
guy.
way of things."
Just pissed
We
off the
all-
dragon. That's what happens.
Keep saying eat them, and I know that they even talked about getting eaten whenever they were out there on RSC or whatever. But like, have we actually seen a dragon eat someone?
Taryn's
I don't think
supposed to
that's-
eat them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just joke about getting eaten.
Oh,
But-
it's
Yeah.
not a joke.
I would love to see a couple characters develop into like some real badasses here. Like we saw that a little bit with Liam before his unfortunate end. I would love to see like Riddick or Sawyer or even Rhiannon too. Just something where they just like turn into an absolute menace of a writer. Just like something. I don't know. I'm very curious to know how more writers don't know about the venom, or more importantly, why the Empyrean keep that knowledge to themselves. Me and Connor were talking about this a little bit earlier. Because like at this point, I'm assuming all dragons know that venom exists, yet it seems like they keep that information on the down low until the writer somehow, faces them in battle. Do all the writers know at forward outposts, like especially ones that have been attacked? But at the same time, like even though we hear about attacks in Battle Brief, we hear about them being griffins, but like it can't always only be griffins, especially if there are venom out there like attacking places. And I assume, they lie in Battle Brief in some or if not all of that reporting to the cadets. I was trying to think if there was a report where like everybody died in an attack that they shared with the cadets. So then they could say it was griffins, because then nobody could say that it was venom. But I don't know. It's got me all twisted. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a bit of a starting point of a team assembling. I feel like Rhiannon and Auric are going to be looped in pretty soon. Auric already knows a little bit anyway. Riddick and maybe Sawyer as well, just by way of association and like loyalty to Violet. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we even see Dane come to the rescue in some sort of attempt to like clear his name and conscience if he learns more of what's actually going on. And I think,
Hot take.
I think something has to go wrong with the archives and they're accessing it too often, or something that's going to get them into like super big style trouble. The interrogation torture scenes are obviously still on the way. I'm honestly kind of looking forward to it, first of all, but I'm wondering if they're going to
Because
get any info.
You know they're going to be intense.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's I agree with you, Kyle.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Wondering if they're going to get any info out of anyone, and or we'll get to see like our team use the techniques that were used on them on others later. And then I guess a final thing that I didn't actually write down, but with Jon talking about like the venom and all that, and our earlier theorizing about Nolan possibly healing venom. As you were talking, I was like, what would possibly be like the not final, but like the plot line to go to? Like, say he heals a venom, whatever. Someone gets healed and they're like, we did it. I feel like that would only come into play if someone that we know that Violet is connected to also turns into venom, and then she would be like, oh my gosh, thank goodness Nolan knows how to fix you. So I would be really interested to see if someone in her group or whatever, for some reason, or maybe just like, I don't know, a tangentially connected person to her. I don't know how close they could be, but it'd be interesting to see someone she cares about being like, oh my gosh, they for whatever reason had to dig into the power of the earth, and good thing we can fix you though. But who knows?
Yep.
Always
That's it.
questions, never answers.
Ribbit.
Ribbit. That takes us to the cry counter. I don't think any of us cried this time around.
Just from laughing.
Yeah, I cried a ton in this episode. Oh my gosh. But we don't count those. So when we're reading, I think Connor and I are still at 2, and the boys are at a big dragon's egg.
Oh,
Get it?
nice.
I think I just thought of that.
Wow.
So good.
Write that down. Write that down.
Thanks, guys.
And on that beautiful note, thank you for joining us for episode 7 with Iron Flame. Next week, we will be continuing with chapters 22 to 36, which will end part 1 of Iron Flame.
There are parts.
Yeah, part 1 and part 2.
Dang.
Yeah. D.
You don't remember that at the beginning and it said part 1?
I don't at all.
I didn't highlight that, so.
I did, actually.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
How many parts? I guess I would assume 2.
2.
It's just 2, yeah. This is the only book with parts.
2
So-
parts?
2 parts.
That we know of.
Well, for
The series
for now.
isn't finished
Well, I
yet.
mean, like,
Well, yeah,
literally
yeah,
of the published.
Sure. Anyway, make sure you're following along at Between Pages and Friends on Instagram for updates, episode schedules, and general bookish shenanigans.
And for even more bookish shenanigans, don't forget to check out our Patreon. Hit up betweenpagesandfriends.com for the Patreon link, merchity merch, because who doesn't need more bookish swag? Our Amazon storefront full of must-haves, GoodReads, StoryGraph, links to stock our TBRs, and more. Until next time, stay ribbit, don't ribbit, and stay ribbit.
Chomp, chomp.
Ribbit.
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 You guys are the worst.
Now you can't cut out that blooper because they'll need to know the content.
Ribbit is in the history of our podcast.
We did it.